All right. Madam Clerk, item number 20.
Item 20 is from the Administrative Office to make findings that Quincy Engineering Incorporated, in response to RFP number 17-0470-02-918 for the Disaster Recovery Program Manager, has been determined to be responsive, responsible, and qualified to perform the services outlined in the RFP, and award RFP 17-0470-02-918 for the Disaster Recovery Program Manager to the sole qualified respondent, Quincy Engineering Incorporated of Rancho Cordova, California, and authorize the County Administrative Officer to negotiate and execute a task order-based agreement for services for a 3-year term in an amount not to exceed $6,965,500 for Disaster Recovery Program Manager services upon County Council and Risk Management review and approval.
And Mr. Chair, we have a couple of people who will help answer questions on this. One, Bonnie from my office will be speaking on it from the purchasing side. She's really the person who handles all the contract review and primary purchasing within the office. We also have representatives from Quincy Engineering here and our Public Works Director as well to be able to respond to questions and comments. Now, we do have a PowerPoint presentation if the board would like us to go through that, or certainly we can go through answering questions if the board would like more information that might be in that PowerPoint. We can bring that up at a little later on into this discussion if the board wishes.
Mr. Chair, if I can forward disclosure, I have had a previous relationship with Quincy Engineering. At one point, they short-term rented an office that I own. We currently have no relationship, and that is expired, and I do not think that causes me any need to recuse myself, but I wanted to disclose it.
Thank you for disclosing it.
If the board chooses, Chair, not to see the PowerPoint, maybe we could get it forwarded to us as an email or whatever, since it's not in the board packet.
Yeah, if you could do that, forward the PowerPoint to us. And
can I do that with the board, or should we give also the board clerk to then go ahead and post for the record? Okay, great. I can do that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Refresh my memory, who pulled this item from the consent agenda?
I pulled this item. I did.
All right. And could I request that we address specific issues? Reason for pulling, so we can focus on those, then look over the...
Well, I had several reasons for pulling it, and I had some emails between the CAO and myself.
Okay.
I was concerned on, one, we're already at midterm, and the amount of money that is projected here for this year, this fiscal year, was at $1.845 million. What does that transpire for the remainder of the year? I wanted to know the exact costs to the county itself. We have percentages here on what we're going to pay, but obviously we're going to have to expend the money out before we get reclaimed from FEMA. So I wanted to know exactly what our costs would be and who is going to be the administrator of this contract as far as on the county-wise.
Okay. I just needed a focus.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And Sharon, following at your point is that I would be very interested to know how, from the auditor, how that cash flow would look, because we're going to need to set money aside, or is there reserve somewhere that she's going to be able to utilize? Because I don't want us to get into a crunch here where they suddenly submit major bills and then we don't have the money to.
Those were my concerns.
Mine as well.
I voiced them.
Thank you.
That's why I pulled it. I wanted to make it public that I did voice those concerns. And I don't know if the auditor's available, if she can come answer some questions.
I bet she's on her way
Unfortunately,
over.
she's on vacation this
Oh, she's
week.
on
On
Bad
vacation.
circumstance of timing. I will speak to the fact that cash flow is definitely the biggest concern. This item, or I should say these costs encompassed with our recovery of the roads projects within the fire burn area. When we had the discussion in October and November about cash flow, this is really the largest item within the concerns on cash flow. It is something that we have looked at. At this point, we haven't needed to utilize any type of borrowing to offset that cash flow, but previously when we've gotten together, and we being county administrator, auditor, controller, and others, the discussion was all ranges from if we think the timing's quick enough to be able to do a TRAN, anticipating that we get the funds back, or if we would have to go out to short-term bonds for some of this. At this point, it's difficult to accurately predict because we're talking about a multi-year contract. Realistically, the direction has been put the gas down because we need to get these road projects completed and done within the timelines. Operationally, that doesn't always happen quite as smoothly as we like. I know that Quincy in their bid documents did submit an estimated timeline, which I would feel is a pretty aggressive timeline for construction projects, but that does carry over into certainly next fiscal year with how, what our cash outlay is. But it is absolutely a cash flow concern for us, and this is where, when we start to look at some of our cash flow options, this is one of the big considerations for us.
Mr. Chair, we're going to discuss those options today in this agenda hearing this item.
Are we going to discuss those
Yes.
today? Well, it was my intent to bring all of this up, yes,
Okay.
and discuss it, because I have concerns, fiscal concerns. Supervisor Mills, you have?
Yeah, thank you. I look at this as a situation where we might have to insert something as a control factor in our timeline to say that we know what we're capable financially of handling in a 90-day window or 180-day window, et cetera, so that we have some control over to what level or scope the project's going to go during that period to be sure that we're able to meet the obligation when it's there. I didn't see that in this document anywhere, but I think it's an important direction that the board needs to discuss and possibly take, is to be sure that we are able to meet the obligation, and it might mean readjusting the timelines as to what our expectations are to get certain things completed.
I could see your point. Okay. I have some other questions pertaining to FEMA funds, and where are we? Do we know where we are on recovering the funds from last year that we expended? And we were expecting recovery this year with FEMA, and the state. Are we fully recovered?
I know we're not fully recovered, but we are mostly recovered at this point. I didn't think to pull that number today. I apologize. Otherwise, I would have pulled it before the board meeting, but I'll be happy to get it for you and get you that number. But we are receiving funds, and true to what FEMA has said, the cash flow issues are mostly contained to the 2017 winter storms types of activity as opposed to Butte fire. Now, that is going to be a compounding factor in here because this does include some of the winter storm recovery, which are some sizable dollar amounts that will mean potentially having to carry those for a year, 2 years as cash flow on the books.
Any other board comments at this time? If not, I'll open up to public comment. Well, hold on a second. Yeah, does staff have any presentation they'd like to present? Or I know Bonnie, you stood up and were up here.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Bonnie Rich Administration. I am happy to speak to the procurement process. As the CAO pointed out, we do have funds budgeted in Butte Fire permanent work for this. I think after maybe we listen to other comments from the public, we might be able to answer more specific questions.
Yes, and I'm aware, we do this fiscal year, it says 1.845 million, but the concerns are, we're already through midway point of our budget. It's going into our midterm presentation to us, the expenditures between now and the end of June, and going into next year's fiscal budget, where we're going to stand and where the monies are going to come from. There's a lot of things that are different heading into that year that weren't when we headed into this year back in June.
My understanding, if I may, just within that particular budget unit for Butte Fire permanent work, those appropriations are there. There are no expenses to date against that budget unit. So my assumption is that those monies will carry forward into the next fiscal year, and we would be presenting to the board any adjustments that are necessary at that time. Beyond that, I don't have anything, to offer. The funds are there to get us through the first year, and as I said, Supervisor Tofinelli, I believe those funds will carry forward into the 18-19 fiscal year.
Whatever funds aren't expended.
Correct.
Correct.
But those funds, the way
That
I
we're
understand
talking
it, are specifically allocated or appropriated for this work.
Yes.
That's my understanding.
And I understand that, and that's what's presented to us here. Again, my concerns is this is a 3-year contract for $7 million. We're only talking about appropriations of, again, 1.845 million at this time, because we're not into next year.
Correct.
Or the next following year.
Correct.
So whatever, absolutely would carry forward whatever we don't expend in the next 6 months if we let the contract today. So that being said, public comments.
Good afternoon. Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. And I apologize, I don't have a computer, so I'm coming into this asking some real dumb questions that I need to know, and maybe people on TV need to know too. Are we talking about, is this the disaster recovery in response to the fire and the floods? And is that what we're talking about here? And why we need this? How many employees are involved in this program, and what kind of activities are we discussing? Because this is blah, blah, blah. I don't even know what we're talking about. So if somebody could answer those questions, that might make me shut up and sit down.
Any other public comments? We'll take all public comments, and then we'll have staff answer all the questions at once.
I don't know how the trees that are dying, I understand you're going to try to do something with them. But I've noticed that along the roadsides, a lot of the trees are being cut down and not replaced. And I think that's really sad, because that's the only place that trees are allowed to grow in some places, because a lot of times cows, if they have trees in their field, they eat everything down to the nubbin and then they die. And so the only trees that are allowed to regenerate are along the roadsides. A 100-foot tree generates 6,000 pounds of oxygen in a year.
It's my understanding that this agenda item deals with road repairs and that contained I don't see the correlation to tree removal, tree mortality. It's a different program.
Well,
Not to be
understand.
rude. I'm sorry.
Well, to finish what I was saying,
No, let's make sure we're on the right topic, please.
Hold on. Okay. We need to keep on topic.
Okay.
So if you're heading towards somewhere that's going to meet.
I
this,
am.
Okay.
So 6,000 pounds of carbon dioxide are cleaned from the air. 8,000 pounds. And 6,000 pounds of oxygen are put back in the air. And we are taking the roadside trees away. And to relate it to the, whatever it is you guys are trying to, the mortality thing, to me, they're dead, and yes, they need to be cleaned up. But, what part of this program is about regeneration of the trees? That's what I don't understand. Why are they not correlated? Why is the...
Ma'am, we're talking about road construction and redoing the roads.
Right. And you're
not
leaving
tree
the
mortality.
trees out, is what I'm trying to say.
We have a separate issue for tree mortality. That's a separate contract that was spoke of earlier, before lunch. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board, or excuse me, staff. Bonnie, can you answer the questions that were asked?
So what I thought I heard, and I may ask the Director of Public Works, Jeff Krovitz, to step in, questions about the work, the employees involved, and the activities involved. And what I can tell you is that as the agenda item spells out, we are contracting for a disaster recovery program manager to assist us in all aspects of disaster recovery as it relates to Butte fire and winter storms. The staff that are involved, it will be a collaborative effort between staff and administration, staff and public works, Office of Emergency Services staff, and the auditor controller. We will all be working very closely on this contract. It will be a task order-based contract. I heard Supervisor Mills express some concern about, I think, what sounded like maybe having some controls over the work that's being done. And I believe that the task order-based contract process does that for us. It gives us the ultimate control instead of just generating a broad-based contract and issuing a notice to proceed and saying march forward and do the work. It will be very scope-specific as the county defines it. And that, I think, is all I have, unless, Jeff, if you have anything else to add?
Jeff Krovitz, Public Works. Thanks, Bonnie. Ms. Newman had a question on scope of work for this contract. It's pretty varied, but the bottom line is it's taking the scope of work for repairs from declared disasters, doing enough engineering design work to be able to allow both the county and the granting agency, FEMA in this case, to execute environmental clearance. And then the final design will be done, and then construction contracts will be executed. And it's primarily for repair of disasters at disaster sites resulting from the fire and from the floods. And so it includes road repair, some culvert repair from the fire. It also includes culvert replacements from the floods, road repairs from the floods. And in addition to that, there was another question about what about replanting of the trees. There's the two grants that the county received, the Fire Mitigation Grant Program and the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, which are both FEMA grants. Both of those grants have watershed recovery with some tree planting involved in it, but those are on private lands. And this contract also handles the administration and the execution of that work.
So the outcome of this would be shovel-ready projects that we can take and say, here's a complete package and look for funding for.
The funding, probably the best way to say it, the funding right now is secured or obligated for the public assistance portion, about 40 miles of roads from the Butte Fire. The funding is also secured for the two grants, the HMGP and the FMAG. We do not have authorizations yet for 2017 winter storms, but we have been required within the project worksheets that were prepared by FEMA and sent to us to do preliminary engineering so they know what the scope of work is in order to determine the environmental impacts and any required monitoring or mitigations. And so the work that's going to occur, I would say within the first 3 months of this contract, will be preliminary engineering for those work that the environmental clearance is really nominal so that we can get contracts in the ground and working this summer. Those project sites that will have a more protracted environmental clearance where we have endangered species, we have archaeological resources involved that we have to mitigate for, those will take a little bit longer, and those contracts won't be coming into play until I'm thinking sometime in late 18 or early 19.
Okay.
Hopefully.
I'm interested, no, I need to. Are these already employed county employees, or are there going to be new employees hired to do this work?
I guess the answer to that is we are currently, and I think that CAO would probably be better if you want to address this or you want me to address it.
I mean, at this point for this project, adding staff, is that what specifically you're asking,
Yeah.
Bonnie? The plan was not to be adding staff for this. The contractor obviously has their own staff. No, this is that's why the contract, the $7 million is paying for the staffing through the contractor. They're not county staff that we're adding.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring it back to the board. Is there any further board discussion? Questions? If not, I'll look for a motion.
I would move the item, Chair.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to regular agenda.
Item 25 is from the Administrative Office to receive a report from staff, Cal OES, and local organizations regarding the ongoing Butte Fire recovery.
Good afternoon, Brian Moss, Administrative Office. Got caught in the maze there. This is your monthly report on Butte Fire recovery. As you know, we continue to get closer and closer on the insurance end of it. I know Mel Knight is here today to talk a little bit about that as far as the insurance recovery. Speaking with Jeremy the other day, my understanding is I think we've already exceeded the amount that was possibly anticipated by FEMA and Cal OES in actually doing insurance recovery, so that's a very good thing. So with that said, unless there's specific questions from me, I will turn it over to the others. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Jeff Krovitz, Public Works. Since the last report, work has been progressing on the contract you just voted on, as well as the burn tree removal. So I called the contractor back to do some punch list removal. We removed about 23 trees on Hoover Road that should have gone out in the first round. About 5 of those were on right-of-way, and the majority of them were on private property. We've also gotten the monitoring reports for endangered species, biological and archaeological monitoring submitted to FEMA, and that includes the recent trees taken out in December. The rest of the work that we've been doing on this particular contract for tree removal has been for insurance recovery, and I'll have Mr. Knight speak to that if you don't have any other questions on Butte Fire.
I had breakfast with you last week, so.
It was a good thing. Thank
I
you.
do have one question on we had downed some trees on BLM property, and there was something going to happen there. Do we have an update on
Okay,
it?
so the trees on BLM property through which county roads pass, FEMA does not cover those in the public assistance program. The contractor inadvertently dropped about 114 of the total 500 and some trees on BLM lands. We've negotiated with BLM. They call that a trespass. We have more negotiation to do with them, but they've given us permission to remove those trees. I've asked Phillips and Jordan to give me a cost for picking those trees up and transporting them to the Red Hill site. The logs going to the mill, the branches going to the burners. CAL FIRE is okay with that. But again, the cost for that is on the county unless we can find another method of paying for it, another grant. But right now, the public assistance grant through FEMA will not pay for the trees on BLM land. Their thinking being that as a federal agency that starts with an F and ends with an A, they are not responsible for a federal agency that starts with a B and ends with an M.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Mel, is it proper? Can we call you Sonny?
That would be fine. That's what my family had called me for many
told.
years. It still does.
That's what I was told.
Yeah, yeah. I have a sister-in-law and brother-in-law that are friends and I believe neighbors of Gary's. So he's actually, yeah. If you were to contact my wife and say something about Mel, she would think you were referring to my daughter Melanie.
Ah,
so, but that's one of those family things. But yeah, Mel Knight. Sunny Knight on reporting on the Butte Fire recovery. Specifically, I'm going to talk today about the structural debris program and then the initiation of some activity that relates to the tree program. Structural debris program, which you've heard quite a bit about. Just as a reminder, there were 883 actual properties involved in one way or another. We now have 75% of those definitively resolved. And no further questions, actions, or whatever posed there. We do have about 220 or 25% that for one reason or another are not totally resolved, some of which are simply that we just don't have all the information. We've received some of the money, but the insurance company hasn't given us some final clearance. Others are where we've just had approximately 40 who have just completely ignored every appeal we've made, a number of those things. We intend to make a final mailing to all the property owners and state this is your status as we understand it, very factually describe what their status is. That would say something like, insurance adjuster indicates you've received $15,000, you have forwarded $12,000. If this is incorrect, please let us know. Otherwise, this is what we will be forwarding to the state. We do not intend to have any action taken by the county that relates to trying to recover or dispute or get involved where folks have chosen to not be responsive or to have what they believe is some mitigation that we are unable to actually resolve. And again, there will be a number there. Again, all in all, though, I think we've had a very, very successful program. We expect, again, we've received $5.4 million to date. We expect on this final mailing to the 220 properties, a number will continue to do some last-minute payments. In fact, at least one of the insurance companies is still making drawn-out payments. We get checks almost every day now that come in from someone who finally got their payment from their insurance company. So a lot of those things are continuing to go on. But we expect to, within the next 30 days, be prepared to do a final report to the state. We'll have an Excel spreadsheet that will state the status of each of the properties, and we will pass that on, and at some point we'll be prepared to take this $5-point-something million and transfer that, I'm assuming, to the state and federal agencies as whatever the process might be. But again, we'll be moving this to closure. I'm referring to it as a soft closure because we will indeed be generally finished, but since we are transitioning, we're taking advantage of the economies of scale and the experience of Jeremy and Tetra Tech having the contract authority to now use some of that same information on some of these same properties and some new properties as it relates to the duplication of benefit that relates to the tree program specific for right-of-way. And we've been working with Jeff. I've been working with Will Downs on making sure that that works well. We're already seeing very, very tremendous efficiencies. Jeremy has relationships with almost all of the same adjusters from the insurance companies, many of the same property owners. We've found, for instance, that 2 property owners own about 20 of the properties. We found some other efficiencies there. There's about 159 total properties in this phase. Of those, 97 require no further action immediately because we know of their coverage or lack of coverage. We've got about 60 that are going to require some action. We're now trying to deal with making sure we have definitive policy statements in place. It's a little complicated here, unlike the structural program where the debris removal program generally did all the debris removal from the property. Here, this will be that maybe we will take 10 trees of their 200 trees that were damaged, only the ones that were in right-of-way endangerment. So if they get an insurance allocation for tree damage, then how much of that is going to be duplication of benefit? And we're working with Tetra Tech on that. We'll probably be dealing with administration and council on trying to do that. The general direction and policy has been that we are here not to try to extract the maximum amount of dollars, but rather to see that people meet whatever necessary obligation that they have. And again, trying to do this as an assistance in meeting these obligation program rather than something that is a collection program. And that's where we intend to proceed as we've proceeded with the other program as well. If you have any questions or
Question?
Right.
Perhaps public might, so hang around.
All right.
Is there any other staff report? If not, we'll open it to public comment.
Yes, I had a question that Mr. Krovitz brought up here, that the cost of milling these things and getting rid of the refuse would be a cost to the county. I'm thinking in terms of, could we recover some of those costs at the mill at Red Hill over there by selling lumber to the public or to the homeowners in an effort to save the county costs and offer a resource to the Calaveras County residents? Is that a possibility? And I think because we're talking about the blue stained wood, I believe, I think it would be very beneficial for the county to consider whatever this mill is able to do as a way to generate some revenue for the county by selling the lumber to, if it's coming off of private property, to offer it to the homeowner, and if they're not able or wanting to buy the wood or pay for the milling, to offer it to the general public. Has that been a consideration?
Any other public comment? Seeing none?
Quick answer on the trees and the milling, depending on the program. The FEMA program for public assistance Any proceeds from selling milled wood goes directly back to FEMA. So there is not a lot of benefit in that. Concerning the tree mortality program, as long as the disposition of the lumber from bug kill or from the BLM trees is distributed to nonprofits, it's considered a wash and there isn't a repayment required. So the county has already taken advantage of some of the wood that was milled this summer and fall on some of the projects that you see going on around the county. So that would be continuing. And we have offered some of the milled lumber from bug kill and from fire potentially to Little Leagues for bleachers and things like that. Any other questions?
Does that answer your question, Bonnie? Okay.
Jeff, what's the status on the curtain burner? Now the weather's changed.
I would let Brian speak to that if he'd like. Until we actually have a known end to fire season, it doesn't get restaffed by CAL FIRE. I know that much.
Yeah, great. We're currently working right now getting the contract filled with Altaville-Maloney Fire District so they can be on site, and hopefully that's what I had to step out for. Hopefully we can get that taken care of and they can fire it up. They're looking at tomorrow.
I know John Rohrbaugh Chief Rohrbaugh was very interested in
Yes.
getting going on that,
Yes,
because
correct.
he had the manpower and the equipment to help
Great.
get it done.
Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
Just real quick, follow up on that contract. That was distributed to Altaville-Maloney's maybe 6 weeks ago. We finally got it back. They had a couple of small changes, and we are sending that back to them as we speak. So that's just a contract between the county and Altaville-Maloney's for the standby. So that has been in process and should be wrapped up.
Were they going to use Murphy's Fire as a backup plan?
I don't know.
Because I know there was some
I know
discussion with
there was some
Murphy's about it.
discussion on that. The last I heard that they were not, but that may have changed.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That was an informational item, so there was no action needed. I do want to say right now that the next item I see here is a presentation, and its estimated time is 45 minutes. I see we have the coroner here, we have the tax collector here, and a tax assessor on some items, and we need to go back into closed session. We had kept one session open this morning. What I would like to do is move item 26 down to right after item 29, and go ahead and go with 27, 28, and 29, and then go to closed session and come back and do the presentation at that time. So we don't have staff sitting here all that time while we're trying to do this. Is that good? All right, so let's move to item number 27.
Item 27 is from the Administrative Office to approve the attached budget adjustment for the Coroner's Office 101000450 with the drawn contingencies in the amount of $100,000. This action requires a 4/5 affirmative vote of the board.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and the board. I've got I guess a short presentation here that I might as well go through. I haven't been here in about 5 years. We do this every year due to the status quo budgeting. And I'm on the wrong page for starters. Like lunch, I'm half asleep here. I did receive an email from Chairman Tofanelli over the weekend, and he was asking me of the 94 cases I investigated, or I think he said 98 cases, how many cases I needed assistance with. And the answer to that is, I don't know where, or the number I guess came from the sheriff's office, how many times they've called me, but reality is we looked at over 200 cases last year. The fact of assistance is I needed assistance with every case. The Calvert County does not provide vehicles, equipment, or any infrastructure in order to do my job. So we do that. It's all borne under contract with the local mortuaries. The actual number of cases I investigated calendar year 2017 as I said, was approximately 200 cases. Of that, 154 became actual corners cases. Out of that, we did 83 autopsies. And autopsies are where the, I got to think of a better term. Autopsies are where the balance of my budget is expended. So we did 83 autopsies out of that 154 cases that we kept, and then 71 of those cases would be unattended deaths, where a person has not seen a doctor in 20 days is an automatic corners case. A lot of those cases, if we do the extra work, we can avoid doing an autopsy, which saves the county money, obviously, so we don't have to do autopsies. Cost $1,500, and I'll get into that in a minute. Some statistics for you. Case-wise, this year we had 21 automobile accidents in Calaveras County, which resulted in 22 deaths on the roads of Calaveras County by accidents. That's a pretty high year this year. There were other accidents, you name it, but car accidents were the lion's share. We had 10 confirmed suicides last year and another 10 cases that may or may not have been suicidal deaths. Those are classified as undetermined, or they could still be pending the manner of death. Those are overdoses and things like that that you don't know, and you'll never know if it was a suicide or accidental overdose, anything like that. We had a couple of homicides last year. Most of the homicides are handled in-house or in the county. The autopsies are done at the mortuaries, the local mortuaries. There are cases where the sheriff's office would like those cases sent out of the county for an autopsy. For instance, we took one to Sacramento County because they have a better facility for collecting evidence and so on than we do at the mortuary. We do have a very good pathologist, Dr. Robert Lawrence, who worked for San Joaquin County for over 30 years. He retired about 15 years ago, and he does all our autopsies for us. There are also other cases we send out of the county, skeletal remains, drownings, and some homicides that would have decomposition. They'll go to University of California, Santa Cruz, to the forensic anthropology department there, Dr. Allison Galloway. She has a partnership with pretty much all the counties in the state, and she will do a forensic anthropological exam, for instance, on Indian remains to make sure that they are indeed Native American. She'll look for any pathological findings, anything like that, to rule out homicide and so forth. And why I'm getting into the transporting out of the county is those all cost money. It's $475 each direction to transport a body to Santa Cruz. A couple years ago, we were down there 5 times. So we have to send somebody down there. Sometimes, you know, this will go in the paper. Sometimes I'll go down in my own vehicle, pick up a case. Those are cases where remains were skeletonized or decomposition, and what they'll do is they'll clean everything down there, and you'll come back with a box of bones, basically, and so on and so forth. So we can save a little money in that respect. Originally, my budget request was $212,000. Today, we're asking for $100,000. So we're reduced before budget time by $75,000 due to the status quo budgeting, which we've done for, God, the past 10 years probably. In the beginning, I started in 2002. We were pretty much right on every year. Didn't have to come ask for money. I can't remember what we asked for last year. But we've come up short since we've been doing the status quo budgeting.
Kevin, you mentioned the county doesn't provide a vehicle, and can you tell me what on an estimated yearly cost would be just for the vehicle transportation part of it, and if a vehicle was supplied,
well,
would the savings benefit?
I've got some statistics here that may help, and I've got it all listed here, so if you can let me regress just a minute, it'll just take me a minute. An autopsy costs Calaveras County $1,500. Dr. Lawrence is the doctor who does that for a local autopsy. In the case of a homicide, he charges $2,100. The reason for that being is that he is a forensic pathologist, and he will probably have to go to court, and there's further, more detailed things that he has to do in that autopsy. Toxicology cost runs an average of $100 to $250 per case. So we don't do toxicology on every case. We try not to, but if we have to, we do that. Getting to what you're talking about, we have a contract with the local mortuaries to do the removals and so forth to pick up the bodies. Every time a van rolls from the mortuary, the removal van charge is $115. So if you take 115 times 154, that would give you what the actual vehicle cost was. But then there's incidental charges. There's a company out of the valley that we hired to transport, and they charge by the mile for transportation. That we don't know. So when the mortuary goes out, picks up a body, brings it back to the mortuary, the cost of the county is $550. And that cost includes removal costs, employee costs, and the refrigeration and storage of the body. If after the investigation it's determined that an autopsy is required, then the cost is another $300. So for an autopsy case, the mortuary is charging the county $850. If you wanted to provide your own facility, we get a building, we get vehicles, so on and so forth. You can imagine what the cost would be. So it's actually getting done pretty cheap, in my opinion. The way I budget or figure my budget is I use the average. The average for autopsies in the county is about 80 cases per year. So I take $2,500 and I times that times 80, which comes out to $200,000, and then add a little bit more in there for incidentals, body bags, things like that. So this year we'd asked for $212,000. And that seems to run pretty steady, about anywhere from 70 to 85 autopsies a year. So it is the formula I've come up with. It works out pretty well. We're unique as a department. We're pretty much mandated to do what we do. It's hard to cut corners. There's really no way to do that. We don't know how many deaths there are going to be, thank God, a year. But it's really hard to estimate. I mean, we do estimate pretty closely, but we think we do a pretty good job of saving the county money, and that's pretty much all I have for you. If you have questions.
More questions? Supervisor Mill.
Thank you. Mr. Raggio, our year-over-year traffic fatalities doubled last year. From what Caltrans?
Mr. Mills, I don't have those figures, but yeah, they were higher this year than last year.
And are you able to determine? You said about 80 autopsies per year.
Mm-hmm. This year, actually 83.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to get at is there a trending going on here that is starting to go up, or are you seeing something stable?
Not really. I mean, a few years back, it was in the papers that we had over 20 suicides a few years back. So things just run like
cycles.
This. We do have a pretty high suicide rate in Calvert County.
Okay. So the next question is that based upon last year, did you ask for money last year?
We did. And I don't have the exact figure, but I think it was around what we asked for this year. We've been under budgeted for years and years and years due to the status quo budgeting, and this is what we do rather than come to the meetings and sit there all day, which I don't have a lot of time. I'm the only employee.
Right.
We'll come and do this every year.
I'm just thinking it might be better for us if we know year over year you're going to need X amount of dollars above what your initial budget looks like, and I do have your final budget worksheet right here.
Yep.
It would be better for us to, in essence, aim to the realistic number rather than come into a mid-year and then have to try to make up a shortfall. I'd rather that going into the year that you're okay for the year, and only an anomaly would drive it into a needs request for additional funding. So
yeah, in the case of a homicide, if we get several homicides in the year, that can blow me right out of the water.
And that's the whole point is if we realistically budgeted you at $325,000 rather than $224,000, for instance, then we would be where you need to be. Now, if we carry money to the end of the year and we need to do something, we can always transfer it into the next year.
I agree. Yeah, and that's where I was getting at. That was the end of my...
I would much rather propose that you do away with the status quo budgeting cycle and just go back year over year and say, this is the amount of money I realistically used. And knowing what my trending is, there's where I need to be in my future budget.
Sure.
And I think it would save you time, it would save the board time and everybody time in trying to come to a number that works.
It would, and in my case, I'm trying to be fair and everybody else is doing it, so I'm doing it too, and it probably saves a lot of screaming and hollering at the budget hearings.
Oh, I understand.
So,
Supervisor Oliveira.
Thank you for taking the time to come in.
yes, sir.
Stole my thunder, Supervisor Mills. Past years, you're budgeting on status quo. And how many times have you come to the board for additional funding in the last 5 years?
To be honest with you, I haven't come to the board in 5 years myself, as the CAO took care of it for me, thank goodness.
Oh, really?
But it was, I've come every year.
Okay. But you've been short every year?
Every year for, at least the last 5 years, yeah.
For the benefit of the folks that may not understand, what is status quo budgeting?
Well, in my mind, it's budgeting at what you were budgeted at last year. In my mind, I'd like to see it budgeted at what I used last year, is what Mr. Mills said. Okay. Am I right? I don't know.
It's been longer than 5 years. When I was on the board before, several times.
Yeah. And usually now we were budgeted a little higher. I mean, I had to come for $30,000 one year. The past few years, it's been cut lower, and we were at 100,000 we need this year. I've got 20 some odd thousand worth of bills sitting on my desk right now. When the budget cycle started in July of this year, July 1st, I paid over $35,000 in bills that came from the last budget cycle. So, a big chunk right off the top.
Just to clear up make sure we're all on the same page. You own mortuary services in the county, correct?
No, I don't.
You don't? You work for mortuary services?
That is correct.
As an employee?
That is correct. And I'm
elected. And you are the elected coroner of the county?
And public administrator.
And public administrator?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In your budgeting process, do you run that through our auditor or CAO? How does that work?
CAO.
CAO? Okay. And you want to get rid of status quo budgeting?
Well, I don't want to get rid of it, but I'd like to get budgeted realistically. I mean,
there's the word I was looking for.
I use my formula, and if I'm doing 80 cases and they average $2,500 a piece, it's pretty simple.
You mentioned you have 21 auto fatality cases. Those are investigated by CHP state. Do you receive any funding at all from the state on those cases?
No.
Everything's borne on by the county then,
correct.
Right? Because it occurred in the county
on
a public highway?
And $2,500 a case sounds really, high. If I wanted to smoke and mirror you, I looked at 200 cases last year. We could say it cost $1,000 a case.
Right.
Which still sounds high. But to be honest with you, the meat of my budget comes out of the autopsies. So, you have 83 autopsies at around $2,500 a piece. You're at over $200,000.
Mr. Reed, I agree. This is all guesswork because in the type of field you're in and what you have to do, there's no crystal ball. I too would share Supervisor Mills, if we can get to a more realistic budgeting, it might make it easier on everybody involved.
Yeah.
And I think it might make it easier for you too.
Of course.
That way you can find out what you need and you have that at your fingertips instead of coming back to us and saying, hey, I need more body bags.
I'd rather be duck hunting on a day like today.
I understand. Okay. That's all. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
And realistically, too, is that if you start building a budget that has some contingencies built into it, then if there are unforeseens, you're not caught having to do this, which is a time waster for all of staff. I would rather see.
It is understandable with the financial condition of the county and so forth. So I understand.
I'd rather see the budget plus a little bit as a contingency, and even if you don't use it, at least we're starting to think that way.
Correct.
Instead of being reactionary, we're going to be proactive in how we're looking at your situation. So I would rather in the future budget cycles that we get away from this type of budgeting and start being as close to realistic as possible with what you really need, and then you're not dealing with this.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
Any other Board questions or comments? Not? Okay, hold on. Supervisor Oliveira.
Yeah, Mr. Maderio, you mentioned you have bills on your desk about $20,000, $30,000? Is that what you stated? I'm not going to hold you to an exact amount.
About 25,000.
About 25,000?
25,000,
And part of this 100,000 you're requesting would cover those?
Oh, yeah.
So we'd have 75,000 to go the rest of the...
Yes, correct.
Rest of the fiscal year with? Mm-hmm. Okay, you think
And
that's
it depends
enough?
on the month. I mean, we've had months where we've had 10 corners cases every month. Which is this
very
month
familiar
is,
with that one.
That reflects 10 autopsies and more than that in corners cases. That amount right there.
All right, but you feel 75,000 will carry you through this year?
100,000.
No, it won't. I mean, I'll get to the end. I'll be probably the last month I'll be broke, and then we'll do it again like we did last year.
Okay.
Pay everything in July. So.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
We'll open up public comment.
This is kind of timely. I attended a Neptune Society seminar last week and talked about cremation. Had a lot of questions that they couldn't answer, and so maybe this gentleman can help. When we bequeath a body part, like an organ donation or eyes or skin, will that add costs to the autopsy or the treatment of the body afterwards? And in that case, who would be covering those costs, if we know?
Is there any other, hold on, is there any other public comment? We'll have all public comment and then we'll answer the questions. Derek.
House of Gallup Taxpayer Association. It seems like what needs to be done here is to try to identify what the likely costs would be, as Dennis Mills suggested, and then establish that as the budget amount. If that can be done, that should be done now. Thank you.
Any other public comment? If not, we'll bring it back. Staff, you want to answer a question?
The question was regarding donor donations. Normally, when we have a donor case, someone is in a car accident and they're a donor, that cost is borne by Sierra Donor Services or whatever donor service is coming to harvest, as they say, the parts. Wish I had a better wording for that. But.
Okay.
Sorry.
Bonnie?
Just a follow-up question. So does that save the county any money if we're donating a body part?
No, it saves family money in that depending on the
Can you stand up?
Where they go.
Can you stand up and
depending on where it would save the money, the family money in a case where they don't have money for cremation, for instance. There's a company called MedCure that will take a human body and for free, and they will pay for the cremation after they harvest what they need. They don't take everybody. I'm too heavy to qualify. They won't take anybody over 300 pounds.
Maybe
they won't take. No, the age is not a requirement, but it depends on if they're a drug user, alcohol user, hepatitis, things like that. They won't take them, but they will take several. The problem is they have 7 days from the time of death to the time of harvest, or before they have to. It has to be done in that 7 days. And then we could open a whole nother can of worms here.
Okay. Thank you.
But anyway, you got it. Yep. Yep.
All right. Any further board discussion, questions? If not, I'm open for a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion, Supervisor Garamendi.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Mills. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. I got through it with no bad jokes.
You got one in.
Not out the door yet.
With that huge umbrella.
All right, thank you.
All right. Madam Clerk.
So item 28 is from the Treasurer Tax Collector to authorize the tax collector to pay Mineral Mountain Water Company for excess proceeds distributed to Troy Williams in error in the amount of $3,694.
Good afternoon, Barbara Sullivan, Treasurer Tax Collector. I don't know how I can follow that, but I'm kind of close, the tax collector. Right? The corner?
Yeah.
No. Anyway.
You're harvesting taxes.
Yes, yeah. But in front of you, I put this on the regular agenda because it is an interesting item that I would never have, where I would give somebody money back or even ask to do that. So I thought it would be something you probably want to look at and ask me any questions you have. Excess proceeds is something that happens every year when I have a tax sale. This happened back in 14, coming forward in 15 when the claims were submitted. I had 0 staff almost in my office at that time. So this is how this item got missed. This gentleman that did get the money was second in line and not first in line to get the money. But because we didn't catch the claim at the time, Mineral Water was not given the money. In the attempts to try and collect it, I failed on attempts to collect it. I went to and filed a small claims. I did not appear that day. I was sick, and I didn't have staff that could go. So I'm under the assumption that that's why that got denied. I really don't know because they don't give you a reason. So legally, I don't think there's anything else but really to make this whole for Mineral Water, to give them the money that I believe they should get.
Any board questions, comments?
Ms. Sullivan, is there a process that we could put in place before we distribute proceeds that, in essence, check some boxes and be sure that we've got?
We do have that.
You do have that?
We do have that.
It's just because of manpower that it wasn't?
Correct. This
followed.
got attached to the other claim, and it would have been caught if somebody was actually actively doing that position. So yeah. Now we have a checklist. I've put a lot of things in place whenever something does come up like this. The main thing is we get a lot of money every year, the general fund does, from a lot of the excess proceeds. So this is very odd. This is something that should never happen, and it won't probably happen in my next 4 years, hopefully. So it is very rare, but we do have checks and balances. We also send out a letter. Once we do say, okay, you are going to get excess proceeds, we send letters out to those that filed a claim. Again, we didn't find that claim, or else he would have been notified, Mineral Water would have, and they could have said, hey, we filed a claim, how come we're not? So we do have a letter process too that even goes with that, but because the claim was buried, so, yeah.
Supervisor Olvera, your lights on?
Yeah. Ms. Sullivan, you mentioned that you were lacking in staff at this time. Tax year 14-15, is that what we're talking about?
It was, yeah, November 15, I lost 3 out of 5 of us.
How'd you lose those folks?
One never came back from a medical leave, one got a job in Amador, and one retired.
So there was not due to budget cuts, you just...
Oh, no. It was strictly just happened.
Luck of the draw.
And it was tax time. It was just, it was horrible. So, but I have a great staff
I appreciate the fact that this is on the regular agenda. As you probably well know, we're faced as supervisors with a lot of questions regarding taxes and tax collection. And I want to make sure that the public understands that although we appear to be perfect at times, we aren't. And I mean everybody in this room.
Correct.
Even myself, I know. My next question is going to be, are you up to staff now?
Yes. It's been interesting because I do have one person that's an unsecured property tax, but they've been a cannabis tax person. So we've been busy. My office has been really busy. That's all I can say. I'm not sure if we're going to keep this staffing the way it is, but that's for us to see later on this year. So.
Okay. Do you know of any other cases that might be fall in the same category in the last 10 years?
Meaning, what do you mean?
Have you ever had this happen in the last 10 years before, where you had to take some of the small claims court?
Never.
I know it's limited by amount.
Never. I've never taken anybody to small
This
claims.
is the first time?
Yeah, even personally, I've never. Yeah, it's not something I'm used to.
That's all I have.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions by board? If not, I'll open up public comment. Nobody's coming forward, so we'll bring it back to the board. I'll entertain a motion. A motion by Supervisor Clapp.
Second.
Second by Oliveira. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Madam Chair.
I'm the clerk.
Clerk. That's twice. I promise that won't happen again.
I should get $1 for every time, right?
Easy.
I haven't called the CAO a supervisor yet.
Okay. All right, item 29 is for our first 5 Calaveras. Introduce and waive reading of an ordinance repealing ordinance number 3049 and adding chapter 2.18 to the Calaveras County Code and approve a summary publication of the ordinance prior to adoption.
We have someone from first 5?
Hello, Terry Lane from First 5 Calaveras. And basically, this process is an administrative one for us. Every year, our First 5 commissioners review our ordinance. And when it was looked at, it was noticed that it was still an ordinance and not a part of Calaveras County Code. We used to not be part of the county until a couple of years ago, but now we are officially a part of a county, and we are a division from the Department of Health and Human Services. And so that's why we weren't part of the county code before, but we are asking that to go in as county code, and also to add the statement in there that we are located within the Calaveras Health and Human Services Department.
Any board questions, comments? Seeing none. Any public comments?
Al Sagala, Taxpayer Association. It'd be good to know if there's any changes in the work or responsibilities or authority of the organization because of this change. Thank you.
So the answer to that is there was no changes specifically to our work, although we now are under the County of Calaveras, and so we revised our policies and procedures, which was approved by the Board of Supervisors to fall under the policies and procedures of the county. So it was maybe a little bit of technicalities with how our steps in accounting, et cetera. But now we are definitely following the county code and the county policies, as well as our state policies.
Answer your question, Al?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other public comments? If not, I'll bring it back to the board. Looking for a motion?
Second.
A motion and a second. Motion by Garamendi and a second by Mills. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. We will now go into closed session and come back and finish with item number 26.
Do we expect that we may be back about 3 o'clock? Do we know?
I'm not sure how long this is going to take. I really can't tell, but we can say we'll probably be back in session around 3 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm not sure where it's going to go, so. Madam Clerk.
So the report out of the closed session that was held during the break, it was a continuation of item 1 from this morning. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, Personnel Matter, conference with labor negotiator Judy Hawkins, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management, regarding Deputy Sheriff's Association, Sheriff's Management Unit, Service Employees International Union, and Calaveras County Public Safety Employee Association negotiations. As it relates to the continued portion of item 1, labor negotiations for the Deputy Sheriff's Association, there was no reportable action taken.
All right. We will now move back to item number 26.
Item 26 is from the Administrative Office to receive a presentation by the Strategic Plan Committee on drafted mission, vision, and value statements, provide feedback to the committee on any necessary changes to the draft document. Alternatively, find that the draft is acceptable as proposed and adopt it as the mission, vision, and value statements for the county.
All right. Mr. Chair, I promise a short presentation.
Okay.
But it is with excitement, really, that we bring this to the board today. And I say we because this is a committee effort, and I'll get into who the committee is and some of our process.
Okay.
A few of our committee members are here. Thank you. More were here earlier, but it's been a longer day, and it's hard to make sure that everybody can stick around. I know that that Sam Leach had some court matters that he had to attend to, and I guess the court takes precedence over the presentation. So really just a general overview: strategic plan, mission, vision, and values. The work group was established following the two-day board workshop that occurred in August, on August 16th and 17th. And really, one of the takeaways from that workshop was a recognition that the county is operating without unified mission, vision, and value statements, and also that we are not utilizing any type of an operational strategic plan. So through the process of those workshops, as the board will recall, there was a lot of discussion about what are the key pressing issues with the county, what are the concerns. One of the other elements was what are the organizational strengths, how do we as Calaveras kind of define ourselves, and what then would that look like as a public-facing piece, but then also an internal-facing piece to help give that information and impression to our staff. So the work group was formed, came together to draft statements and a plan to really vet that language with county staff and then bring a recommendation back to the board for adoption. So our work group members, and this was voluntary, I don't know that there were many, if any, voluntold positions coming onto the workshop. These are really people who wanted to be engaged in this process. And it was comprised of department heads and county administrative officer. It included, and this is in alphabetical order so as not to provide preference to any position or person, Kristen Brinks with Health and Human Services Agency, Leslie Davis, the county assessor, Rick DiBasilio, the county sheriff, Nancy Giddens, the county librarian, Judy Hawkins, Human Resources Director, Sam Leach, the Chief Probation Officer, myself, County Administrative Officer, Stan Moore, Information Technology Director, Megan Stedfeld, County Counsel, and also Rebecca Turney, the County Clerk, Recorder, Registrar of Voters. So as you can see, I think it was a nice cross-section of elected, appointed departments, service departments, both internal service departments, but then external-facing departments. I think that was a really a nice blend because it gave a lot of perspective when we got to the meeting. So the first step then, the group met a number of times through October and November. And the first steps really were taking those sheets that were drafted specifically related to the mission, vision, values for the county and try and make some unified sense out of that, since these were a bunch of different groups, 5 different groups that came up with different ideas on flip charts. That was definitely an initial challenge, just to say, okay, what is the direction? What are the theme, the elements that are going through this? And I will say a lot of discussion came out of the group. I'm looking over at some of our members, and it was really interesting because it was a very spirited discussion, and I can tell you, first of all, online thesaurus is very helpful, as is dictionary, because there was literally a lot of debate on single words because words matter. Words matter because of the cultural significance on how people read it. Words matter because of a stigma that might be attached to it. I mean, there are so many factors that went into what word we use is important. And in fact, it changed again after the employees saw it and looked at it from, hey, from a manager perspective, maybe that makes sense, but from a line staff position, I think this sounds a little more a little more relatable, a little more meaningful for what this person's doing. So the preliminary draft was given to the department heads in November. That was the first opportunity for all the department heads to look at it and say, this is what the committee came up with. We'd like to now send this out to county staff for input. Following that, then, we did send it out to all staff with an introductory memo basically describing the process and asking them for their honest feedback. Ultimately, it's important that county employees have an opportunity to comment, to provide their input, because this is something that, ideally we want, the county to be operating with, and it should be meaningful and connected to that employee day in, day out. So in December, after we got the feedback from the employees, the group came together for a final time to incorporate some of those changes. As I said, some of it was really about words, the meaning or the cultural context behind one word or another word. And it was through that meeting that we came up with our final draft of each of the statements that are before you today. So first, the first item is the mission statement. The draft mission statement that the group has come up with is Calaveras County Government, serving, strengthening, and supporting our community. And I would say any members of the group, if I would like to acknowledge this has been a huge group effort. It is not by any means one person's effort. I'm giving this presentation, but I'd be more than happy if any group member wants to come up and add their input during this piece. But then, of course, at the end, I would ask that anyone who wants to kind of make a comment about their thoughts, please do. So serving, strengthening, and supporting our community, it was chosen in part because recognizing there's a fierce level of independence throughout Calaveras County. And what we were trying to acknowledge here is, government does provide essential services, but there was more emphasis on the support piece. I think that the sheriff, who unfortunately isn't here, said it most bluntly on the first day, which is really, we get it, you don't want us to really be bothering you, but we're here when you need us. What was essentially the one-side spirit of what he was thinking about, but it's true to a large degree where, in general, our residents like limited government, and they want to know that we're there to support the community where it's needed, but not overreach. So we kept it as succinct, as broad as possible, but also trying to, denote that we're serving our community, we're working to strengthen the community and provide support to our community. The vision statement, which on our rewrite, I'll say this one, and vision statements are tough. This one probably had the most disagreements back and forth and questions and difficulty in coming up with a final one. The one that we are bringing to the board today is Calaveras County, a community of agricultural, historic, and recreational abundance where residents and visitors can enjoy safety and prosperity. Now, the goal, obviously, on a vision statement is this is where we want to see ourselves. This is when you're planning, you're looking on the horizon and saying this is what we want. I think what we tried to look at is what are the areas that we know as residents, the absolute beauty of this county, the bounty of being able to go find hiking trails, fishing rivers, go up into the mountains, camping. There is a lot of recreational, but there's also huge historic significance with the gold rush. Agricultural, we were kind of bantering on, are we an agricultural county? What does that mean? Coming from a very, very large agricultural county to a smaller agricultural county, nonetheless, what strikes me going into work every day is I love looking at the cows on the field grazing, and the significance of the that's agriculture. That is, broadly defined our agricultural commodities down to on the valley floor where we have quite a few orchards. So we wanted to pay homage to what we see as our key assets, but also recognizing that our, historically biggest priorities, and I think continue to be, we want whoever they are, whether it's a resident or a visitor, to be able to enjoy safety and prosperity in this county when they are here. And then last on our value statements, the value statements that we came up with is integrity. We hold ourselves to high ethical standards. Balance, we value our heritage while striving for continuous improvement. Resilience, we respond creatively to challenges. And service, we serve the public with hard work, civility, and respect. Each of these statements, again, went through a lot of iterations, a lot of, what does that word mean? How do we want to, what are the connotations? But I think each was important for their different reasons, and really trying to emphasize, one, to our current employees, but two, to prospective employees, that these are values that we hold the most important. We expect integrity. We expect our staff and officials to operate ethically. We also recognize balance. We work very hard to preserve our heritage and recognize that each of our communities is very unique, and we don't want to change the uniqueness of what is a difference, on how Copperopolis defines itself to how Murphy's, to how McCollum Hill. Every community here, I think, would, absolutely talk about their own heritage, but we're also looking for ways that we can help, leverage that heritage to provide prosperity and growth. And then resilience is, this county is absolutely, an example of resilience. We have been through so much, the economic downturn, the Butte fire, the storms, now tree mortality, and continue to respond with resilience, because that's how we keep going. That's how we keep up the good fight. And then service. Service, I think, is that essential piece of recognizing that we are serving the public, and we serve them with hard work, we serve them with civility and respect. And certainly in some of our departments, we have public that are coming to us and they're not happy, but we also, being public servants, need to keep that perspective in mind of civility and respect. I feel so bad on my edits because Peter came in here and I realized that in my drafting I left off Peter Maurer from planning. The planning director was also on the list, and I'm sorry, Peter. Stand up now, we'll embarrass him. Honestly, I thank you, Megan. I apologize for that. Just going through the list, and I checked it like 4 times. And at this point, before I talk about feedback and next steps, do any of our work group members want to talk about any of the particular statements, any comments? Okay, I just wanted to double check of who's left over here. So feedback and next steps. What we're looking for today, obviously, is feedback from the board on the drafted statements. And then following that, if the board would like to see edits, if they have concerns with areas, we'll go back and work to bring then a final item back, or if the board's good with today, we can proceed with utilizing this as kind of the framework and bring back a formal adoption of this. What we would do then with it is also try and brand it within our existing county logo, put it on our website. I think it's important to note, though, that the adopted statements will not take away statements that are already in use in specific departments. And this was one of the early questions from departments, and it's a valid question. A number of departments have their own identified mission that is very specific to that department. This would serve as an overarching mission, vision, and values for the county. Be used more for our recruitment materials, for any of the materials that we're distributing to, like our budget book, when we're out working on economic development, those types of activities, that's part of that branding as opposed to individual departments. Following that, then the next steps are developing the strategic plan. And these dovetail into that because what it really does is provide the focus for, what we're looking at for that strategic plan, particularly when we're looking at where we want to be. If our vision is we want our residents to feel safe and our visitors to feel safe and prosperity, those items should be addressed in our strategic plan. If we value making sure that we're delivering good customer service, that also would be reflected within the strategic plan. So the mission, vision, and values really are the first step to that, but have to be developed before we can really have a meaningful strategic plan that then the departments are working to live by. And then again, ideally an organization is strategically aligning itself with any mission, vision, values it has adopted. And with that, I turn it over again to any members of my group if they want any feedback or comments, or however the chair would like to provide comments.
Well, we'll open it up to the board. Any comments from the board?
I'd like to start off on the vision statement. It reads Calaveras County community of agricultural, historic, and recreational.
Thank you.
Recreational, abundance where residents, visitors can enjoy safety and prosperity. My community is completely retired. It misses the whole point. And probably the biggest income in my community is retirement. And you start noticing it when they board up the golf course. I mean, it sort of misses that whole point that this is probably one of the best places on planet Earth to retire. And I'd like to see that emphasized a little more because of the 3 surrounding counties. We collected the largest group of retired peoples. We collected over 300 people in the last year of retired peoples in my district, which outdid the other Tuolumne and Amador. So it's something that we really draw a lot of retired peoples, and I'd like to keep that in mind on this, is if you're looking to retire, this is a great place to come. Bring your big pensions, bring your Social Security, and sell your big house in the Bay Area and buy a house up here. So I'd like to see that. Thank you.
Supervisor Oliveira, your light's on.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree with Supervisor Clapp. Only we've lost almost all of our golf courses. I'm the only district that has a golf course, I believe.
No, you're not.
Well, anyone that's good. So we'll keep all of our retired people and invite more. Okay. I would agree with Supervisor Clapp. Our retired population here is very prominent. We do have another issue that some of our retired folks are leaving. They are going to the areas that are more climate tolerable, if you will, but that's an issue we should be aware of. Whether we need a change in the wording, I don't know how we could do that, but that is an issue that we should recognize our senior folks and our retired folks. Thank you.
Supervisor Mills.
Well, it'd be come to District 4, you don't have to shovel rain.
Try skiing on sand.
It works. The mission statement is really the foundation of what we're doing here. What do we do? And that is the mission statement. That strategic plan is going to be how you're going to get it done. So as you work to the strategic plan, your vision statement helps to support how you're getting it done and what methodology. So you may find as you get into the strategic plan, and this is to the whole group, that suddenly one piece of the mission statement needs to change simply because it doesn't have the foundational piece that it needs to be functional in the rest of the document, if that makes any sense. So don't lock yourself down that the mission statement that you have is going to be your final mission statement until you've got that strategic plan at least partially worked through.
Supervisor Garamendi.
I'd like to start out by commending the staff and the committees that came together to make this happen. I know how hard it is to go through word by word to get some sort of consensus. And consensus, as we all know, is very difficult to achieve. So my compliments to the staff and all your hard work. Thank you. And elected officials, thank you very much. I think it's good. I think it's a good start. I agree with Supervisor Mills that, it might change as we come up with our strategic plan. But and there's many communities that are very vital to our community. It's not just the retirees, it's the working families, it's the schools. It all goes together. But I think the staff has done a very good job of trying to keep it at the 35,000 foot level so we don't start breaking it down, because then everybody's gonna wanna put their word in there and this thing's gonna become an essay. So my compliments to the staff and thank you very much.
I echo those sentiments too. I know it was very difficult trying to hone this down and get as short as possible, but yet the biggest meaning that you all wanted to put in there. So my thank you to all of you for enduring and doing your job. And I echo the sentiments of my fellow supervisors here also, as far as reflection. And we are, at least in the upper part and in Clyde's district and Supervisor Clapp's district and somewhat my district, a retirement community. Although there are many young couples that commute, they found housing up here a little bit more financially easier for them, and they do commute. And it could be reflected somewhat in that way also. But I'm very pleased with what you've came up with. I think it's a very good job. So with that being said, I would open it up to public comments.
Marty Crane. This is just the kind of conversation I would have loved to have been involved with. It sounds like it was exciting from the minute you got there to the minute you left each time. And it felt to me like word by word by word, everyone getting involved. This is wonderful. And building our strategic plan moving forward, this is a great foundation to start with. And it doesn't, I don't feel alienated, and I'm 68 years old. I don't feel alienated with this at all. And I know a lot of young families that wouldn't feel alienated. They'd feel welcome. So kudos. This is great. Thank you.
Marty's right. This is really good. And I'm amazed at how good it is. And, well, something that's written by government, you expect some flaws.
Oh, wow.
Well, one of the things that is important is to recognize the framework and the limitations on governmental power. This is not talked about very much, but it's there. It's our U.S. Constitution that allows our states to be there and our counties to be here, and actually sets out a mission of protecting the life, liberty, and property of citizens. It's in the Constitution. And when something's so well written as this, how would you include the Constitution? And it might take somebody a lot better in English than me, more better, on the first paragraph, Calaveras County government serving, strengthening, and supporting our community while respecting the constitutional rights of the people. I think that would round it up just perfectly. Something similar to that. Thank you.
You're not bringing your dictionary to...
Huh? That's so heavy, I've got a sore shoulder already. I had a couple of comments and a couple of questions. Has the members of this work group been privy to the Mintier Harnish report? I know there's some people that are trying to keep the public from seeing this information, but until there's transparency, I'm always going to be skeptical. I'm always going to be suspicious that someone's trying to pull something over on us. So I'm just asking, have the people that participated on this work group seen the Mintier Harnish report? I would imagine not. Okay, since we spent $1 million on it, I think it's time we get to see it. It's outdated. I go back and I read minutes from 4 or 5 years ago. Those are outdated, but they certainly give me a clear picture of what's coming or what has been done. I think that's real important. Then I had some ideas on the mission statement. As good as it is, I would like to see something included about protecting and preserving our heritage of independence and self-reliance. I'm not sure that's where it needs to go, but we have a history, especially in Calaveras County. You know, we used to be the Wild West. We have a feeling of independence, and I think if we can concentrate on self-reliance, looking to ourselves to support ourselves, I think that would be a good idea to put out there. I like the idea of including retirement community somewhere in here. And then when I moved on to the value statements, I saw integrity, balance, resilience, and service. I would suggest adding some kind of fairness, that all residents will be able to enjoy the abundance of our natural resources on an equal basis. I would like to see fairness added to our value statement. And that's all. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Yes, hi, Lisa Muter-Tees. I just wanted to say to be cautious on using the word retirement. We don't have any facilities for the retirees. I sell houses left and right for people that have to leave our county because of that. So I think we need to work on the general plan alongside this plan that you guys have done that's wonderful, and carry on with getting some industry and jobs and bringing retirees here that have facilities to go to. Thanks.
Ashley Skeen, District 2. I just want to say I love this. It's really, really well done and very nice. I only have 2 suggestions. One, I liked what Bonnie said about our heritage. And then I also would agree with Al about mentioning something about where authority from the government comes from. And I think that would be good under value statements on page 4, mentioning the word justice. Through the rule of law, we seek truth and uphold the Constitution of the United States. The law is not always fair, but the law does bring justice. So I think the word justice would probably be better than fair, but that's just me. So thank you.
Any other public comments? If not, I'll bring it back to the board. Any board comments? No? Supervisor Clapp?
Yeah, I have one. Yeah, in my district, we're working on a big medical center right now for elderly people, and it'll be and they choose Valley Springs because that's where the population of the elderly people live. And that's the reason they did it. And they were able to get grants because of our population.
So, CIO Lutz.
This is excellent feedback. My suggested next step then is we'll come back, review each of these options to then bring back a final statement. And if we don't adopt any particular piece here, we'll provide a summary on kind of why we decided not to include it and get the feedback at that point for ratification.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on. I'm looking at the agenda. How many people are here for item number 34, the PACE program? I'm noticing that we have an estimated time of 1 hour and 45 minutes for this. So I would like to move it now and have it, okay. So why don't we take a couple-minute break, and then we'll bring item 34 and go do it, and then go back to the board's items. All right, we're back in session. We're on agenda item number 34. Madam Clerk.
Item 34 is from the Administrative Office to adopt a resolution to terminate the PACE program in Calaveras County.
CAO Lutz, this is your agenda item.
Yes, and I'm today here to present this item is Krista Von Lotta, one of my staff in the office. She's assisted by Brian Moss, but again, I think Krista will be probably doing the bulk of the presentation. So.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Krista Von Lotta from administration. Can you speak up a little?
You'll have to speak in.
Okay.
Pull it closer to you.
Thank you for taking the time. But just before we get started, I'd like to mention a couple of things. First of all, I guess, how did we get here? We are here today by virtue of the fact that staff has been advised of interest on behalf of certain board members, certain departments and staff therein, as well as aware of the general concerns in the larger communities statewide and elsewhere with respect to the program, in addition to recent changes in the law. Further to that, we have also been approached by 2 different program administrators who would like to join our program. And so with that kind of broad overview, that's why we're here today. I'd like to suggest that this is not meant to be in any way, shape, or form any kind of negative or finger-pointing session towards any stakeholder in any sense. We really just want to get kind of all the issues out in the open and then let the board choose how to proceed from there. With that, let's go to our second slide.
Can we hold for just a second, Supervisor Olvera?
Yes.
Maybe you can clear something up on the board packet. This indicates to terminate the PACE program in Calaveras County.
Correct.
Do we have a PACE program in Calaveras County?
We do indeed.
When was that enacted, for my own information?
October 11 of 2016, after approximately 14 months of contemplation, which was originated in August of 2015 by the then CAO.
Okay, thank you.
And also, should the board have any questions as we go, please, no, I invite you to do so. Thank you for doing that, and it'll certainly help. You might note as we go, this can be quite dense, this material. So, okay, so what is PACE? Property Assessed Clean Energy. The idea behind it, in short, is to make energy efficiency type improvements to homes, primarily with respect to items fixed to the home, which should, one hopes, reduce the cost over time and benefit the environment. The players here, Golden State Finance Authority, they're the public agency that manages the program with respect to Calaveras County. They contract with Y-Green. Y-Green is the program administrator. The county, the board, back in October of 2016, and by virtue of county staff and the tax collector participates in this program on behalf of Golden State Finance Authority, which I'll refer to as GSFA often, and Y-Green, and then clearly our consumers, residents, and the contractors and others who implement the improvements. Okay, so the history we've also we've already basically touched on, so I am going to move forward here. So back in October of 2016, when this program was finally approved, one of the things that was adopted was the agreement for the collection of special taxes and contractual assessments. This was entered into by the county and GSFA. The agreement that we currently have in place is not consistent. I've been advised by a representative from Y-Green with what they currently offer. We'll get to that later on in the presentation. Okay, so as of the writing of this item, there were 9 PACE financing projects on the tax rolls in the county. That is still the case. Properties are added to the tax roll once a year, on or before October 10. The cutoff date for that is June 29. Anything that occurs after July 30, June 30 in any given year until the following June 29 would not be reflected until the September tax bill of the following fiscal year. That being the case, there have been 47 liens, and again, this research here is as of the beginning of December, although it is consistent with at least the number 47 with information received from Y-Green recently. 47 liens. It looks like 8 have been released, but as I say, Y-Green has 47 financings on the books. So there's a little bit of question mark here in terms of what's actually going to be outstanding. Of the 47, 2 would be in Angels Camp. The remainder would be in the unincorporated areas of the county. And for clarification, the conversation we're having here today is only with respect to the properties in the unincorporated areas of the county. So the 32 that are currently on the books, there's an additional 15 that have yet to be fully funded. Fully funded meaning that the contracts are completed and Y-Green's received, or the owner has received the funding that's flowed through to the contractor. Okay, so of the 9 assessments that were on the tax rolls as of December 14th of last year, 3 of which were delinquent on that date. Since that time, one has been paid. So there are 2 delinquent, 22%. That being the case of those 2, we are aware that there is a prior or delinquent tax history in one of those cases. But I want to be clear here that staff did not delve deeply into, and it's not even necessarily possible to delve deeply into the history or appropriate. So we're a little bit limited in what we can say in this regard. So of those 9 financings, only 2 of them fell under the median as reported by CATFA, on their website. The most recent data that they had as of December was back from March of 2017. Their median assessment amount, annual assessment amount, was almost $2,400 at a term of 15 years, based on a principal amount of just under $20,000. So those numbers are higher here in Calaveras County. We don't know why. I don't know why. One of the issues with the program is that it's difficult to tie and to know when someone enters into one of these assessments how that's actually going to manifest in terms of savings, be it either through their insurance, their energy bills, heating bills, et cetera. So we have form agreements that Y-Green provides to its prospective purchasers here in the county, or clients here in the county. However, with respect to the actual terms for each individual resident, we don't know. There would be differences, obviously, in terms of the amounts assessed, what the money was used to purchase, the length of the term of the loan, et cetera. One of the things, and we'll get to this, that's happened with the new legislation is that these types of questions should become more transparent, if not with respect to individual homeowners in the aggregate, with respect to these different programs. That legislation is being rolled out over the course of the next year. However, an informal survey of county staff, and this is in 2 different departments, indicated that we have received complaints from residents who have entered into PACE contractual agreements. I don't know, and I don't know whether anyone knows whether those are strictly with respect to the 9 that are only on the books, or perhaps with respect to some of the remainder. The types of complaints have basically been their tax bills doubling or tripling for the year, not having been properly advised of what the assessments would be, and the related lien issues, as well as uncertainty regarding their ability to pay. So statewide, it does appear that many of these financing projects are going really well. There have certainly been a lot of them. As of March of 2017, there were approximately $2.7 billion worth of financings out there. However, there are certain issues with respect to these, and especially, for example, in Calaveras County, but even statewide, many of these financings have happened in the last 1 to 2 years. So it's kind of hard to know at this point what the future looks like for the program. One of the main issues is the super priority lien status. It's considered to be super priority because the agreement that the county entered into with the Golden State Finance Authority essentially states, as well as applicable law, although I defer to county counsel on that issue, that in the event of a foreclosure or delinquency situation, the PACE assessment or the special tax is essentially treated the same as property taxes levied by our county tax collector. The agreement that we currently have on file, which I understand Y-Green may be amenable to amending, actually puts our county tax collector in the role of collecting on that debt, should Y-Green wish to enforce that provision of the agreement. The super priority lien status manifests as an issue with respect to someone who wants to sell their home, refinance their home, or perhaps do a reverse mortgage on their home. It's pretty complicated stuff and difficult, one would expect, for some consumers to kind of wrap their heads around. In any event, there are concerns regarding the transparency historically of the financing terms, although there certainly are plenty of disclosures made in the form agreements. Historically, there's been issues with respect to a homeowner's ability to pay, because all that was really the primary issue was how much equity was in the value of the property as opposed to the homeowner's ability to pay. That issue has been directly addressed in the new legislation. Lack of governmental oversight, or any oversight, while GSFA does in fact review the activities of Y-Green, there has been essentially no governmental oversight to date. The Department of Business Oversight in California is actually now in the process of rolling out its implementation of one of the new pieces of legislation that's set to take effect in January 1st of 2019. However, as a practical matter, there are concerns that it will take longer than that to see how and whether it's working, and whether it's working well. So with a view towards the super lien priority status that the PACE assessment has, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae will now purchase mortgage loans for properties that have this assessment, given that the assessments are basically senior to first mortgage. Neither will the Federal Housing Administration participate in forward mortgages, so your typical mortgage, or the home equity conversion mortgage, which would be the only reverse mortgage insured by the federal government. There are other issues with respect to whether entering into these agreements would be a violation of a homeowner's existing mortgage agreement. It would be very difficult for staff to know. There is a covenant and a representation rather in the form documents where homeowners are asked to state that it wouldn't be a violation. However, that's a level of diligence I don't know that's reasonable to expect from an average consumer. In addition, the prepayment penalty issue is really a question mark. I've been well advised by a representative from Y-Green, and I'll let him speak to this issue, Mr. Apostolopoulos, who's here with us today. Been well advised by him that there are no prepayment penalties, and that in the event that someone chooses to pay off their PACE assessment early, they would only be expected to pay the principal and the current year's assessment on the property. That being said, the form documents clearly contemplate, both in the boilerplate and elsewhere, that a prepayment penalty may be applied. Okay, so new legislation specifically intended to address many of the concerns we've discussed. SB 242 talks about oral disclosures that must be made. SB 242, and I find this to be illuminating in terms of what it says about the way the program has functioned to date. It prohibits kickbacks, prohibits contractors from giving a different price for a project financed by a PACE assessment than would be provided if paid in cash by the property owner. Places limitations on those who may solicit property owners on behalf of the program administrator. These are all good things. On the other hand, it is of concern that there seems to be a disjunct between what happens theoretically at the Y-Green level, for example, where they have form agreements or making proper disclosures, et cetera, and what's happening boots on the ground that gives rise to these types of regulations needing to be enacted. So Assembly Bill 1284 specifically addresses a number of major concerns with respect to the program, chief among them the homeowner's ability to pay. That is a huge issue, and one hopes that this legislation will properly address that. It includes valuation models for the assessment of the property value, reporting obligations so that the program itself statewide can become a bit more transparent, as well as training and other requirements with respect to the solicitors and the solicitor agents who act more or less on behalf of the program administrators, as well as licensing requirements for the program administrators. As discussed earlier, the Department of Business Oversight also further to this legislation will be licensing the program administrators and regulating the industry starting January 1 of next year. As also discussed earlier, I note that both Hero and Dividend Solar have expressed interest in participating in our PACE program. So the overarching concern of staff with respect to this item is that despite the new legislation and the hope that the new legislation addresses the concerns that may have affected some of our residents and appear to certainly have affected some people statewide, that there are still a lot of question marks, and that in reality it will probably be some time. A reasonable guess might be 1 to 2 years before there would be sufficient information and oversight with which to properly evaluate the program. And for that reason, we recommend that the program is either terminated or suspended at this time, pending the time when we can make a more full assessment of how it's been deployed in the county. certainly, I'm going to actually go back here. Should the board decide to do that, I'd like to note that nothing would be nullified with respect to previously executed contracts. In fact, with respect to any contracts executed within 30 days after GSFA were to receive notice from the board that such program is being terminated in the county. Should the board not wish to terminate, we also suggest that the board may consider expanding the existing program scope by considering the admission of HERO or any other program administrator, and of course leaving the program alone or directing staff to do more research. Thank you.
Any board questions or comments? Supervisor Mills?
I would like to hear from other members of staff on this matter if they're available to give us their take. That would mean if the...
Do we have other staff members here? We have Barbara. And we have a member of the Auditor Controller's Office here also. Barbara, do you want to?
I don't know. I mean, basically it's covered. Maybe the main problem with what I hear is that would be interesting. Basically, it's when they go to sign the dotted line, they've been told it's going to be a monthly cost, and it ends up being 2 lump sums in their tax payments. So they stop right there. A lot of people stop because they don't realize how much that cost is. I've been told the interest rates were pretty high. Basically, the people that haven't gone through are the ones I've heard from. So I don't know if they've gone to anybody else. The other dissatisfaction I had was that it was not going to be stripped off the roll at the end of the year if they did not pay. It needed to be stripped off the roll and sent back to the finance company if we're not collected. So I'm assuming it's staying on there is what we read into it.
Pardon me. We have been advised that Wide Green would be amenable to potentially amending our agreement. However, the agreement we have in place right now does not contemplate removing delinquent assessments from the tax rolls.
That's huge, because that's like co-compliance issues, similar liens. If they, excuse me, if they stay on, that's when they go to tax sale, because they cannot pay the bill. Yeah. So that's why a lot of properties go to tax sale. So that was one of my main concerns. So, yes.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Barbara. Good question. These are, it's superior to all other loans, mortgages or other things. So is it on equal footing as our tax bills pari passu? So if we have a tax sale because someone's delinquent, and we've got this PACE lien on there as well, we split equally. They're the front of the line. Correct.
At this time, that's the way it is.
So they're equal with the county's tax roll.
Correct. So the first year, similar to a senior postponement loan too, it's $70,000 that they want me to collect for them. So when I go to tax sale and I only need $23,000, I have to add that 70 or whatever's on the books, try to collect it. So it doesn't get collected, of course, if it's an acre. So the next year it'll go back, and then we have to make amends. We take whatever we can get to get that resolved. So
yeah, I mean, you've had recent tax sales, so. Just so I understand, I think you just said this, I apologize for repeating.
Sure, not a problem.
So you've got a $30,000 tax bill, lien on a property. 5 years out, you take it through us, you put it on the market and sell it. And it's got another $40,000 of a PACE program on top of that. You're required to sell that property at $70,000 or at $30,000?
At the time of sale, 5 years, whatever that tax bill amount is, whatever's outstanding on the tax bill is what I have to collect.
So is that the 30 or the 70? Is it?
It's not considered. I'm saying whatever is on there, so it's be the total. So if that PACE,
but I mean the minimum, because I know that under tax sales you've got a minimum bid for this, and it's usually what
the minimum bid is what's due.
What's due. Mm-hmm. So anything above that, they'd be first in line.
Correct.
So we don't.
Then that's called excess proceeds. That's what
right.
I was
so
kind of here.
First in line for the excess proceeds. Mm-hmm. You don't have to actually sell that for the full 70.
I have to attempt to do that.
You have to attempt to do that.
And then another year later goes by and I can resolve it down if I have to. But that means we both give.
The first offer is
Yeah, if it
at
doesn't
70.
sell, which it won't. That's like
Right.
micro-compliance, yes.
Right.
So, but I'm not sure, like we said, I just know right now we weren't able to strip that off of there. So if we are, then that doesn't become a problem. You know, then our taxes are the only thing that would stay forward if they were defaulted.
Right, I
for
mean, I
them.
want the county to be first in line. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Just for point of clarification, and I'll defer to others who wish to speak on this issue, whether the tax collector in Calaveras County is in the collection situation and it goes to the 5-year mark is a separate question than whether the county would be first in line. If a program administrator were to move, the county would wait 5 years. Whether it's removed from our tax roll or not, the program administrator would still be within their rights to enforce whatever rights in equity law or according to their contractual agreements at the point at which it was delinquent, and then they would still be treated pari passu on equal footing at that point with, is my understanding. Although, again, I'll defer to.
Yeah, I've never seen it. I mean, I don't know what this particular program would do to our tax roll. I just know taxes are first. They do come first. But whatever's along with it for the ride is what I have to collect, so thank you.
Supervisor Olivera, I think.
Ms. Sullivan, hi. Does the county issue or have any requests from Internal Revenue or Franchise Tax Board on exactly what taxes were paid on real property for income tax reporting or deduction purposes?
No, property taxes are separate, but the IRS and state can come in and be first in line for any excess proceeds.
So if I had a tax liability and I was in the PACE program and I made my payments to satisfy that tax bill, which is the real property tax and the PACE repayment, then that, let's say they're $4,000 each, technically I could probably just claim $8,000 paid in income tax for deduction.
You'd have to talk to your tax man on that one.
I understand, but does the county have any way of verifying the actual taxes paid other than an IRS inquiry?
No, I don't look at people's taxes other than property taxes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Mills.
So the next question then comes is, are you being reimbursed as part of this to handle the program?
I believe so. I believe there's a handling fee at the end, 1%.
I understand that the fee is $100 initiation fee at the inception of the contract and 1% of the assessed amounts and other fees over the course of the year.
Okay.
That's kind of a norm for our direct assessments that are put on there.
Okay. Does that cover our expenses, do you think?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Chair?
So
Thank you, Chair.
I'm looking at Exhibit A that was given to us.
Of the people's outstanding?
Yes, and I'm looking at, say, number 1. Is this saying that their bill prior to PACE program, their tax bill was $758?
Are you looking at the 2016?
And then, yeah,
Yes,
2016,
that was last year's tax
and then after they did the PACE program, it jumped to 4,100. I'd be
They went up-
screaming too.
They went up
if-
3
if
to...
I wasn't
yeah.
aware of that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, they went up 3 to 5 times.
Yes, and like number 3 went from 2,800 to $8,000.
Fortunately, the people have lenders on most of those, so the lenders pay them because they have to keep them solvent. So I don't know what we're going to hear about that next.
Yeah.
And for the sake of clarity, with respect to Exhibit A, I would suggest that we compare the GSFA direct charges against the 16-17 tax bill, as the 17-18 total tax bill does, I believe, also include increases or decreases as a result of the assessor's determination for the year.
Yeah, but not...
We don't know, there's a time frame for this. Is it a 15-year payback, or is that what you were
5,
saying?
10, 15, or 20.
So you have the option of 5, 10, 15, or 20.
I'm not sure whether that's an option or whether it's predicated upon the financed amount. That would be an excellent question to direct towards Mr. Apostolopoulos.
Yeah, and
or
as to
another
whether
program
it's
administrator.
front-loaded, or is it that same payment level across those years? Or does it start going down because you're paying off the loan?
Sorry. Mr. Chair, members of the board, George Apostolopoulos with Y Green Energy Fund. To answer your question, it's a fixed rate term, and the property owner decides whether it's a 5, 10, 15, or 20 year. Now, there are some limitations to the term depending on the product type, like an HVAC unit, for example. You can't finance it for 20 years because they have pretty much a useful life expectancy of about 15. So you can only finance it for up to 15 years max. But those are fixed rates, and the payment never changes for that term.
Thank you.
Whatever term, sure.
Any other questions?
I have a question. This is for whoever can answer it. You represent Y Green. Do we have an exclusive contract with you, or they mentioned there are 2 other groups that are interested?
Not
it's
exclusive.
Not exclusive.
No.
So we can invite in competition.
Absolutely. Absolutely welcome it.
Also, can somebody explain this loss reserve program, this $10 million?
Sure.
And how, what we're reserving and how we're insured?
So the Loss Reserve Program was created in 2013. It is a $10 million fund. The idea with the fund, as I understand it, is that in a default or foreclosure situation, should the mortgage, the first lien mortgage holder, be out due to its incentive, shall we say, to pay the PACE assessment to keep its collateral for its proper loan sound, they can be reimbursed by the Loss Reserve Program. So on its face, the program is good. There are requirements that must be met in order for a program administrator to opt in to the Loss Reserve Program, and to date there has been no charge made against the program. So no one has actually submitted to be reimbursed from it. However, I note that were there to be a bubble with respect to the $2.7 billion of PACE financings on the books right now, $10 million might not go very far.
That's $10 million statewide?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair?
Yes, Supervisor Oliveira.
Will we be hearing a presentation by Y Green? I understand representatives are here. Are you going to be making a presentation? I'm just asking if there's a schedule.
It was not scheduled.
Okay.
CAO said it was not scheduled to do so. If we are done asking questions at the board level, though, I'd like to open it up to public comment.
Now, there is one more question I'd like to ask, and maybe Y Green can answer. What is your interest rate on a 15-year, $40,000 balance?
The interest rate on a 15-year right now, I believe, is about 7.5%. But in some cases, it can even be lower, depending on what type of contractors that are out there. There are different programs where the contractors can assist, can basically use almost like a buy down to the rate, and therefore the rates can be a lot lower for those particular
and
properties.
finance is offered through your program through select companies under your advisement?
Excuse me?
Financing is available through companies under your advisement for this?
We have oversight over it. So if you're referring to our specific company with the contractors that represent our company, they're heavily vetted through the state licensing board, through social media. We have a contractor compliance department, which just about every PACE provider, if not all PACE providers, have. So these, we heavily vet our contractors to make sure they represent the program correctly.
Now, do you have a sliding scale interest rate, or is it qualification, disqualification?
It's based on the term. So if it's a 5-year, 10, 15, 20, et cetera.
Yeah, what's your highest rate and highest term?
I want to say the standard highest rate's on a 25-year, it's about 8.25%. And those are just specific to solar.
Okay.
And we can go as low as 5, 4, 4.75 on a 5-year.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So, you're welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Can I interject real quick and make one clarification that was brought up earlier?
Sure.
In regards to the tax lien being stripped. that's a policy that we've had in place since our inception. So if there is a default, we do strip it off the roll and then we will do the collecting on our own behalf. And so what Krista was referring to earlier, we do have that, and that's an amendment that we can make to the agreement that was discussed with the county 2 years ago. So that's not a problem there. Secondly, as far as, I think Supervisor Olivera, you mentioned something about a tax benefit with the IRS or whatnot. There's actually, the IRS came out, I want to say about a year and a half ago, and they stated that should a property owner have a tax benefit, they can have a tax benefit with the PACE lien with the interest portion only.
Okay.
So, okay, just wanted to make sure you
Thank you.
know that. Sure.
Not the construction cost. Okay, we'll open up to public comment. Is there any public comment? Bonnie, you're up. Are you? Okay. I wasn't sure.
Yes, Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. A couple of years ago, I thought, oh man, what a good deal, but I'm sorry, this program sounds like a swindle. And I think it might initially be attractive to seniors, or it might be aimed at seniors. And I'm just wondering how many participants in this program in our county are seniors? And has there been any loss of homes by liens that are attached to these folks, or their inability to pay this rate or make these payments? I'm real skeptical, and I think it sounds like a swindle. You might be giving people a false impression that, you know, you're going to come out smelling like a rose somehow, and they end up, you know, collapsing. Anyway, that's my opinion. And I would like to know if any seniors are involved in this program, because I think they might end up holding the short end of the stick, losing their home or going into bankruptcy or something, all because of this that isn't real clear. And it wasn't clear to me a couple years ago when I thought, hey, this sounds like a, hey, I'm going to look into, I'm glad I didn't.
Okay, we'll answer any questions at the end of public comment.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Coy Knapp, and I'm the president of the board of Calaveras Association of Realtors. We represent 269 local realtor members, and we are here today in support of the staff recommendation to terminate authorization of property assessed clean energy financing through Y-Grade. Now, I want to clear up some inaccuracies. First off, I am the past chair of Land Use and Environmental for the California Association of Realtors, and I sit on the National Association of Realtors for the Land Use and Environmental. So I know a little bit about green energy and this program. The Calaveras Association of Realtors, California Association, or the Calaveras Association of Realtors and the California Association of Realtors and the National Association of Realtors did not commit our valuable time, energy, or resources to fight against PACE because we don't like green energy upgrades. We are not opposed to home improvements. In fact, we love energy upgrades. We think they're great, and I think they're good for the economy. We're here because we care about homeowners. I'm going to step off a little bit. I've got a script here, but here's one thing. She just mentioned about seniors. I'm going to tell you a quick story about my mom. She's 79 years old, and she was sitting on her porch one day, and somebody came up and asked her, you know, what's her cable service? And she told them, and they talked her into saying, hey, I've got this better deal. I've got everything for you, and we can really make it cheaper, better. And she went right into it. Come to find out, my mom was paying more money for this cable, more money for everything. The service was horrible, and it was just a really bad situation for her. Now let's look at mom coming there, and a contractor walks up to her and does the very exact same thing. Hey, I can give you a new heater. I can give you a new roof. And it's not going to cost you hardly anything. It'll just go right on your tax bill. My mom's a very proud woman, and she would have listened to that and probably jumped right into it. So that answers that lady's question right there. It's happened to a lot of people up and down California here, and it's scary. We are here because our homeowners are a community impact of this policy on real estate transaction that is hurting families and senior citizens up and down the state of California. Property assessed clean energy, known as PACE, is a deeply flawed public policy. We commend you for taking a chance on it. It was a good idea that was gone really, really bad. Homeowners are being hurt. Our housing market is impacted. I do appreciate all the comments that we're hearing about it from the gentlemen that are here from White Green.
Sir, your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
Ben Swapper, District 5. The way I understand this, and correct me if I'm wrong, the liens are there immediately once you are entered into the service. So I think we heard part of it earlier is the liens are there. So at the point where someone needs to refinance their home because they're older and they need to pull a little money out of their equity, they have to pay that lien off prior to being able to refinance. So if someone passes away and they want to leave their house to their children, the children have to pay this lien off before acquiring the house to even sell it so that they can redeem the money that they have to pay for this lien. This creates a problem. As Mr. Clapp brought up earlier, we have a lot of retired folks here. A lot of people that can be talked into situations like this because it's a good idea. It sounds like a good idea. But the structure behind it is not the good idea. So I personally support taking this off the books.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Robert Bendorf. I'm the market development manager for the HERO financing program. By Renovate America, we are not currently in the county. Obviously, would like that to change, but I think that there are some concerns with maybe the current program, Y-Green, that's in the county, but then also as PACE overall. So I actually have copies of our disclosures that I would love to hand out to you. Maybe you can follow along with me, or we can kind of talk about them as we go. I tried to bring as many as I possibly could while trying to be conscious of saving paper. But I just want to address something and actually not read from a script for you, because I love what I do and I love the company I work for because we actually do protect seniors. I have a mom as well who was taken advantage of by a contractor that had nothing to do with PACE financing. There are bad contractors out there wherever you go, and PACE didn't all of a sudden bring them to the forefront in any way, shape, or form. Part of the disclosures that you're actually going to see in front of you is a contract that the homeowner is given and it is allowed to review with HERO as they go through the application process. So they are initialing next to things where it shows exactly how much they are going to pay in interest. It explains to them how much they would pay if they paid to an impound account, semi-annually and annually with their taxes. There are many disclosures that are also in there about home sale and refinance. The first initial that a homeowner has to give is, I understand that it may be required to pay off the remaining balance of this obligation by the mortgage lender refinancing my home. If I sell my home, the buyer or their mortgage lender may require me to pay off the balance of this obligation as a condition of sale. Highlighted in bold that the payments will be on their property taxes, tax benefits to consult a tax advisor, statutory penalties. If your property tax is late, the amount due will be subject to 10% penalty, late fee, and 1.5% monthly interest penalty as established by state law, and your property may be subject to foreclosure. I think everything is in line with what your treasurer's law is. And we disclose that to the homeowner right up front. They have to initial a quarter of an inch away from it and acknowledge that. And in addition to signing it, because we can all get a little bit of a hand cramp and just start signing over and over again, I totally understand that. But in addition to this disclosure, the homeowner must, without a doubt, unequivocal. They must speak to a representative at Hero who goes over every one of these initials with them. The call ranges from anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes, where we describe everything that is in front of you right now, explaining to the homeowner that they have a right to cancel. They have a right to not sign a completion certificate, which makes us not pay the contractor until they do exactly what they promised. And when it comes to senior citizens, we have specialists at our headquarters, dozens of them, that are specialized in working with senior citizens over the age of 64. Anyone that is over the age of 64 actually gets a secondary senior specialist that goes over their contract and makes sure that they completely understand it. So people like...
Your time is up, sir.
Yeah. His mom, my grandparents, they're all protected.
Your time is up, sir. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Supervisors. My name is Kim Schaefer. I do government affairs work for several associations throughout California with real estate. I'm also the chair of the California Association Government Affairs Subcommittee. I work with associations up and down the state of California, and I'm here today representing Calaveras County. I want to first address specifically what this gentleman from Hero was just talking about. It's really important to note that there is no standardized system, or Hero's system is very different from Y-Green's, how they deal generally with consumers, their different rules, etc. I'm not sure if you guys realize this, but the way, and this is I think where the biggest problem is, the contractor is acting as the person that is providing finance education. They're also acting as basically the lender. They're in the home. It's really nice that the gentleman printed out those disclosures for you. The homeowner does not get that opportunity. They are signing this whole entire thing, putting a super lien priority on their house on an iPad with the contractor in their home. Now, I know for sure.
Can you address the board?
Sorry, yeah, I know for sure that Hero does do the confirmed term calls, but again, the contractors and the board, I don't think that you can make a decision that will impact your ability to sell, refinance, do a reverse mortgage on your home in 20 minutes on an iPad. And oftentimes those contracts are not mailed to you until weeks later, so that any 3-day right of rescission, by the time you actually get to read that contract, it's gone. And like Krista was saying, there is a lot going on with this legislation. The California Association of Realtors, just this last Friday, gave an 11-page document with comments into the rulemaking process. There are so many issues that need to be addressed. The PACE providers themselves they admit that this policy has been flawed. There are so many things that need to be fixed. It's opened up this whole plethora for issues to occur. When we think about the tax roll, I mean, historically speaking, what you put on the tax roll and what you guys collect, it's for the public good. It's fire, it's safety, it's trash. It's things that everyone can agree on. This is not a state or government program. It's affiliated, but at the end of the day, these companies are corporations, and the government is collecting for them. And if one person is getting a foreclosure, one person has to walk away in a short sale, how can that be a public good? That hurts neighborhoods, that hurts entire communities, and we're seeing it up and down the state. It's the ones on fixed incomes, the elderly, the ones that don't speak English. Those are the people that are being hurt, and it's happening everywhere. You guys just don't have a whole lot here yet, but it's coming. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Joan Irish. As you know, the program's original intent was to provide cost-effective energy-saving improvements to homeowners. Unfortunately, due to the program's lack of oversight and predatory lending practices, we are seeing property owners making uninformed choices, which can put them at risk for losing their property. We did not oppose this program when it was adopted, but we can no longer ignore the intended consequences of PACE. It will have detrimental impact on the real estate industry throughout Calaveras County and the state of California. Several municipalities in California, such as the cities of Bakersfield, Ridgecrest, and the county of Kern, have recently elected to remove the PACE program from their communities because of the widespread problems for homeowners. Many more municipalities are also reevaluating, as you are today. It is important to note the governor did sign new legislation that does attempt to fix some of the problems with PACE. The legislation is vague and will continue to be addressed in rulemaking by the California Department of Business Oversight. And again, that legislation would not go into full effect until January 2019. PACE providers admit that there are serious problems and flaws with the PACE financing. We urge you to repeal PACE financing in Calaveras County until all of these issues with PACE have been addressed and the legislation is fully implemented. Now is the time to set policy to protect the constituents of Calaveras County from bad actors. Here are just a few reasons we oppose PACE financing. Of course, they've discussed predatory lending. They are honing in qualification is based on home equity rather than on a borrower's ability to repay, which violates the U.S. Department of Treasury's prohibition against predatory lending practices. No financial oversight. Most of the contractors pitching PACE financing options have no financial expertise, and their offers of promises are not currently being scrutinized by the financial institutions or government agencies. Price inflation. PACE contractors often inflate their prices for energy-efficient renovations, often charging far more than fair market value. Not good for the public good. This type of financing not be allowed on the property tax roll. Assessments should only be placed on the property tax roll for the overall good of the public, such as fire, trash, and safety assessments. Even school bonds must be passed by the voters. Structured as a property tax assessment. Because the amount borrowed is structured as a property tax assessment, it attaches to the property itself rather than the owner, which negatively affects the owner's ability either to sell the property or to refinance it and restricts the potential buyer's ability to qualify for a mortgage on the property.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Hello, Board Chair. My name is Charles Ward, and I am representing Dividend Finance. We are the program administrator for the Fig Tree PACE program, or one of the programs along with the HERO program, who is interested in expanding into Calaveras County. And I just want to discuss that PACE is just another financing choice for folks who want to do these type of upgrades. And our company does other forms of financing as well for renewable energy projects. So we'll do traditional credit-based solar loans. We'll do also PACE loans. And so when contractors that we're partnered with go into a home, if they are in an area where PACE has been approved, they can work with the property owner to choose the financing that works best for them. And there are differences on interest rates, on terms, and service. And so in some cases, PACE is a better option for them. And if it's their decision to use PACE, and there are all these everything is fully disclosed. There's the confirmed term call. So they do know what they are signing up for when they decide to use PACE. And it's an option. It's completely voluntary. So no one has to use it if they don't want to. But this just gives them another opportunity to do these type of clean energy upgrades to their home and finance through their property taxes if they choose to do so. So I think there's a lot of talk of the recent legislation that was passed. Over the past 2 years, there's been 3 pieces of legislation that have expanded consumer protections and governmental oversight throughout the state. SB 2693, AB 1284, SB 242. So these pieces of legislation have been enacted to help expand the program. Perhaps there were some issues early on, and I think it's telling that the PACE industry got together with a bunch of stakeholders, realtors, government agencies, mortgage bankers, consumer or low-income consumer folks, and got together and said, hey, there are some issues here, and we're here to come to the table to fix them. And we put together some pieces of legislation that address some of the issues that have been brought up tonight. So, we certainly, as an industry, don't want to have any of the negative externalities that may have happened in the past. And moving forward, we want to keep expanding and improving the program. So, we encourage the board to, not move forward with the recommendation and consider expansion of the program to other administrators. So, thank you.
Hi, Lisa Mutertees. I would like to just clarify that when this came before the board a year and a half ago, the realtors were here. We did ask that it not be passed. It passed by a 3-2 vote. It was not 5-0. Supervisor Oliveira, you did not vote for this. We took you to Sacramento and you watched videos on what happened to people that got these loans. 1/3 are delinquent as of December 14th, 2017, according to staff. That is a seriously bad number. Informal surveys, they were not aware of the amounts, according to staff. Why? If they signed those disclosures, why were they not aware of the amount of their tax bills? That's something to be heavily considered. It's not just a financing choice, as he just stated before me. It is a super lien. Even a mortgage does not receive this status. The Board of Realtors has objected this from day one. We knew it would be a problem. If the product is so wonderful, as they state, their loans are so wonderful, then why do they need super lien status? They don't. They are directly targeting our seniors because they are on very low income. They don't qualify for the loan if they don't have the super lien status to back up their loan. What they're doing is taking their homes as collateral. If they don't qualify, how in the heck are they ever going to make that payment? We are responsible for our seniors. I hope that someday somebody is standing here to protect me when I'm older and lose my marbles, which sometimes I think they're already gone. We need to stop this program, get it out of our county, let them stop targeting our seniors, taking advantage of them, and put our seniors at the front of the line and take care of them. I watch Bonnie, I watch Marty, I watch George Fry, I watch them all come up here and talk to you. They're supporting our seniors, they're protecting our seniors, and by God, they're right. We have to look out for them. They can't look out for themselves. Not everybody has a child that can go in there and read contracts before they get their mother or father to sign it. So we're counting on you to stop this program, protect our seniors. If we're already 1/3 delinquent out of very few that have contracted with our county and Y Green and anybody else, stop the program. Thank you.
Good afternoon. That was going to be morning. Thank you for having me here today. Melinda Huff. I am a realtor. I'm also a director with the California Association as well as Calaveras County Association of Realtors. Yes, I was here 2 times in 2016 speaking against this, and I felt like it fell on deaf ears at that time, so I'm glad to be back here today and have the opportunity. I'm just going to do my little spiel on federal policy. It's recently shifted gears regarding PACE. On Thursday the 7th, HUD announced Trump administration would reverse the Obama administration's decision to insure FHA mortgages with PACE liens. FHA has now stopped insuring mortgages on homes that also carry PACE liens, and FHA is concerned about the impacts of the PACE liens that are on those given super priority status over the home's mortgage. In a letter to its mortgagees, FHA has said the following. FHA is concerned about the potential for increased losses for the Mutual Mortgage Insurance Fund due to the priority lien status given to such assessments in the case of defaults. FHA said in its letter to mortgagees, FHA's involvement with accepting properties with PACE assessments may indirectly help to overshadow potential consumer abuses. FHA can no longer tolerate putting taxpayers at risk by allowing obligations like these to be placed ahead of the mortgage itself in the event of a default. HUD Secretary Ben Carson said assessments such as these are potentially dangerous for our Mutual Mortgage Insurance Fund and may have serious consequences on a consumer's ability to repay or when they attempt to refinance their mortgage or sell their home. In its announcement, HUD also said that FHA is very concerned about the outstanding loans that carry PACE obligations. The post-endorsement placement of these assessments on the FHA-insured mortgage creates a lack of transparency, making it difficult for the agency to understand the true nature of the risks involved. HUD said in the announcement, in addition, such activity is risky for FHA borrowers and potentially violates the terms of their FHA-insured mortgage. I agree with, and we agree as a whole in the FHA's conclusion. We urge you to take in this compelling evidence and terminate the PACE financing within our community. Thank you for having me here today.
Good afternoon, Chairman, board members, staff. My name is Tim Utertes. I'm here to speak as an individual. I'm also a member of the Association of Realtors. Coy was right earlier when he said that this is hurting our clients, and that is why the California Association of Realtors, the local Association of Realtors, and 190,000 members throughout this state are stepping up in local governments across the state to try to put this program back down again. The fact that Fannie, Freddie, and FHA want nothing to do with it should be a warning signal to you all. So please do the right thing. Terminate this program. If they come back later, in a later time with a better financing vehicle that's safer for our seniors, then you can reconsider it. But for the time being, please terminate the program. Thank you.
Sir, you had your time. You
Not under public comment, though.
Okay, I'll allow you one.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to point out a few things, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The this whole notion that we're targeting seniors is not accurate to the PACE industry. Sure, there are contractors that are out there that have probably done that and have probably targeted seniors and everybody else. But the PACE financing companies specifically targeting seniors is not the case here. As a matter of fact, when the new legislation that's going to be that's already into law here, 242, 1284, on April 1st of this year, we'll have the income verification in law, right, on April 1st, which basically means your seniors are protected, especially those on a fixed income. So if they can't afford it, they can't afford it. So that piece of legislation addresses that concern that's been out there. Moving forward in regards to the legislation that has occurred over the last 3 years, that's been fully supported by CAR and the Bankers Association, the Credit Union Association. And since someone mentioned earlier about Kern County, Bakersfield opting out of the PACE program earlier in the summer of 2017, well, since then, almost 100 new jurisdictions have actually adopted PACE financing. So within the state of California, you have literally almost every single city and county has some form of PACE financing available to their constituents because they see the big picture of the benefit of PACE being a financing option, giving their constituents the ability to make those improvements. And, and some look at it as a good public policy because there are certain state mandates that require that by having PACE allows them to have more tools to meet some of those mandates. But be rest assured, the PACE program has been working well. I mean, there's a reason why you have 35 states in this country that have PACE law enacted or are in the process of having a PACE law enacted because they see the benefit long-term to this. Thank you.
Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. I'm also a realtor, but mainly I'm talking from the taxpayer's point of view. Somebody said, I forget who, that the power to tax is the power to destroy. The power to tax is the power to destroy. How could that happen? Well, I think we have a case of crony capitalism. Crony capitalism is when you have a marriage between government and the private sector to hold the public at ransom using government force. In this case, it's a tax collector. What reason is there to place a loan against property enforced by the tax collector? Well, obviously, it would be somebody that couldn't qualify for another loan maybe couldn't make payments, or whatever. That's the reason why you have this high level of default foreclosures. It's a bad deal, but it's a bad deal in principle. Even if they do make some changes, you should never use a tax collector for private purposes. Never. On principle. Even if it sounds good. Even if it's for a purpose that everybody wants. You still should not do it. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to note that Mr. Segala gave me 4 letters to submit into the record on this item, asking the board to consider withdrawing the program.
All right.
Good afternoon. My name is Neil Hamry. I'm a resident of Valley Springs, and I've been doing solar for homes in the last 2 years, and I've not done a PACE program. In fact, I was leery of them to start with. But what I found is that particularly seniors and low-income people, they have a real issue with costs going up. And I'm not saying that this is a perfect way to do it, but don't forget about people's problems, particularly PG&E, which solar helps a lot. Basically, what I see is that everybody is going to have to do solar because where PG&E is going. I mean, it's just going crazy. Even a small, medium-sized system, in a 20-year period, people are going to be able to save in the neighborhood from $25,000 to $50,000 what they have to pay to PG&E if they kept PG&E. Solar is something that you can get a handle on that, arrest the increases, save a lot of money for people. Now, all these people have been talking about the difficulties, what's going on. Yes, there's some things that need to be fixed. There's things that needs to make it work better, to protect people, to make sure they're clear on what they're doing. Personally, I spend a lot of time with people making sure they understand what's going on. But based on the financing that's out there, you're probably looking at only 20 to 30, maybe 40% of the people can do it outside with their credit score and their wherewithal. A lot of people that are on fixed incomes, own their home, have some equity in it. That's a way to handle the cost of saving all this money from PG&E. I mean, it's ridiculous how much it's going to be. If you just use a small 6% increase from PG&E, they've been 6 to 10% last 10 years. They've been 13% last year. It's going to be more than that this year. It's just going to keep going up. So just keep in mind that there's a real problem with people of how they're going to exist. I mean, I don't know how people are going to pay the PG&E bill if they don't have some way to do it. So just keep in mind that we do have a problem here. We all do. That PG&E in particular, I mean, the water keeps going up, the sewer keeps going up, everything else keeps going up. With solar, you can arrest that increase from PG&E and protect yourself, and in the future, even have no bill. I mean, there's lots of ways to do it. And having an option of the PACE program, yes, there's a lot of difficulties going on, but it's something that you do need to keep in the quiver. That's what I'd like to say.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Any board comments, final comments, questions?
Mr. Chair, a couple of questions.
Yes.
And I hopefully will have someone that can address the answers. How long will a solar system last? 10 years, 15 years? I have no idea what that life of a solar system is. Sir, did you install solar systems, you said?
I sign people up with different companies who do solar.
Okay, you're not a contractor or an expert in the field? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
That's all I had, good Chair, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit more.
No, that's it. Sorry. Okay, well, if we're done discussing, we had all our comments and questions. I'm looking for a motion. Sure, absolutely.
Part of my comment is I talked to our tax collector and stuff, and so we've been aware of what's going on the board. We're not really stupid. We're really smart, and I was somewhat offended when I started getting my phone blowing up the other day with all the phone calls to vote for me to vote, and I even asked one of the people that phoned me that to vote against the PACE, and I goes, Miss, do you know what PACE is? No, I don't, but I got some talking points for you. But most of the people on the board are like me. We're very busy people. And so some of these people have gotten like 100 phone calls. I was getting phone calls, and they go, wait, I got another line. So it doesn't do your service good, your cause, when you do that kind of stuff, because I'm really on your side. But you tortured me for like a whole day before I can get here, and I wish you just wouldn't do that. I mean, we're really smart. I mean, we do look into this. This isn't the first time we heard from you guys. And my position is, I think it's a horrible loan. I think the interest rates are high. I think if you have halfway decent credit, you can get 4%. And I hate it when you put on the property taxes, because you're going to get charged 1.5% every month when it goes on there. You're going to get charged a 10% fee, and then you have handling fees. It's just, so you end up burying the poor guy because it's on the tax. I don't think if they want to do it, they need to get a loan, a home equity loan, all kinds of different ways that are cheap. It's in the 4% range. And so that's my concern. And I have friends that did lose their homes, not on the PACE, but on other schemes where you could get loans and stuff on your house and they couldn't pay it. And most of the old people, because I am an old person and they hate it when I call them old people, and so I'll get a lot of flack tonight when I go home. They're very bright. I mean, they're not drillers. They're smart people, and you're lucky they're not here because they'd be all over you right now. And most of the ones I know are well off. But I'm against it. I just think it's a bad deal to put it on the tax because of all the charges that we'll put on it. So that's just my statement. Thank you.
Supervisor Mills.
Just very quickly, I was in the audience, sitting back over there when it was presented in 2016, and some of you were sitting in the next row in front of me. And we listened to it. We were shaking our heads, wondering how did we even think that we could even buy into this point? If this could be cleaned up and presented in a different way on a statewide level, it might work. But the way it is situated now, I can't see it as nothing but a heartache, not only for the people who potentially may have to do a reverse mortgage, or may have to refinance, or may have to sell their property under distress. All of those things have to play into this decision. We can't allow people in a moment of passion to put themselves into that kind of condition. I had the opportunity, the gentleman who presented this, sir, I used to be a contractor. I am familiar with this York 2-ton product. It's a $1,299 product. Just thought you'd want to know. The outdoor unit, okay? Oh, the outdoor. It's just a sample. Yeah, I just thought that was kind of cool that you actually put up a number. And that's a 410 unit. It runs off a TXV. Okay. Yeah. Very familiar with it. By the way, it's a 14.5 to 16 SEER, depending on how you put it into. Okay. Anyway, no, I think that we need to step back and terminate this program in Calaveras County until such time as we can see a presentation that fits and works with our people here.
Supervisor Oliveira.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the recommendation of staff on terminating the PACE program in Calaveras County at this time.
And I would second it.
I have a motion by Supervisor Oliveira, a second by Supervisor Mills. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. All right. Let me get
Mr. Chair, did you want to take a 5-minute break to allow staff to take down over there?
We will take a 10-minute break.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, item 30.
Item 30 is from the Board of Supervisors to adopt the recommended 2018 Board of Supervisors meeting calendar. So the proposed calendar that's in your agenda packet includes the meetings on the second and fourth Tuesday as usual. It also includes, for the first 6 months of the year, a third Tuesday meeting, which is designated for planning items and cannabis appeals. The intent behind this was in an effort to shorten the length of our regular business meeting days from having the lengthy cannabis appeals or planning items at the end of the agenda. So we have put them on there for 6 months in an effort to try that out, see how that's working for everybody. On your calendar also are the noted county holidays. During the month of June, the budget hearings we normally schedule from Tuesday through Friday to accommodate any length that would need to happen. And I think that's it, unless you have questions.
I do have a question myself for the CAO. What date do you anticipate doing the midterm? And it's not on here as a special day. You're going to do it as a regular board Tuesday?
That's correct. Historically, it has been done on the normal Tuesday meeting, usually in the afternoon, similar to how we do budget. We had, I think the 20th, or that's the 27th, because that's February. Is that the last date in February?
The meetings in February are the 13th and the 27th for the regular meetings.
The 27th was the date that I had targeted for doing the
midterm. Okay. All right. Any other board? Yes.
I was thinking also that not only with the mid-year budget, but also on preliminary budget. And should we be possibly looking at that additional date to help us with some of the finance meetings that we may have to have, so that they don't bleed into our regular calendar?
So we always have the option of adding special meetings should we feel the need arise. They don't necessarily have to be adopted at this time. The other thing I wanted to note was staff is recommending the elimination of the night meetings quarterly. We feel that with the implementation of live streaming, that our meetings are more accessible to more members of the public. They can be watched during, they can be watched after the fact, and we were getting a low turnout, staff and public, for evening meetings.
And in reference to the budget meetings, I noticed we have at least blocked out June 12, 13, 14, 15 to kind of denote the traditional budget hearings.
Any other board comments? Any public comments?
Yes, Bonnie Newman from Devil Springs. If you're thinking of eliminating the night meeting, that was usually on the 5th Tuesday of the month. Are you going to have a day meeting on the 5th Tuesday of the month? Because a couple years ago, you used to have 4 to 5 meetings a month, and now we're having 2, maybe 3. So I would like to make sure we're not cutting short our ability to speak to you and hear what business is going on by virtue of eliminating the night meeting. So I would recommend we keep those odd, maybe 3 or 4 times a year when there's a 5th Tuesday and you're used to schedule a night meeting, to keep a day meeting in addition.
Bonnie?
Yes, sir.
we've eliminated those 4 night meetings on the 5th. However, we've included and added an additional meeting on the 3rd Tuesday of every month, if needed. So actually, it's 3 times a month. It could be up to 3 times a month that we are meeting, which would be more than those night meetings.
Okay, so now we're the second, third, and fourth Tuesday of the month, we're having a meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes me happy. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Chair?
Yes.
It's my understanding that the meeting on the 3rd, is that a designated meeting for special issues or?
The meeting that we are proposing on the 3rd Tuesday of the month is specific to planning items and cannabis items. However, if there are things such as the emergency resolutions that we need to adopt on a regular basis within a certain timeline, we can add those, or we can add other things should the need arise. Okay. So the 3rd Tuesday meeting would still include general public comment, supervisors' reports, those normal activities that we have on a regular basis.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Chair.
Any other public comment?
George Fry. I hope that you're going to get the general plan done this year. It's a disgrace to our county that it has taken so long. I remember when I was a planner in this planning department, and we did the general plan in probably 18
George,
months.
This has to do with our calendar, not general public comments. Okay?
Okay.
You guys are going to silence me one way or the other.
Okay. Any other public comments on this issue? All right, CAO Tim, you have?
Yeah, actually, Bonnie's point made me go back and count with our being used to having that 5th day. And I do note 2 days that we would be below the 14-day threshold that we probably need to do something about. The first date being the gap between January 23rd and February 14th. We're at 15 days on that one. And then I noticed another one on October the 23rd to the next meeting being November 13th. We have that same issue that we'll have to address for the proclamations.
For the emergency resolutions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Any other board comments? Moving back to the board. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moves, Chair.
Second. Motion. I have a second. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Madam Clerk?
Item 31 is from the Board of Supervisors to assign members of the Board of Supervisors to various committees for calendar year 2018. So to aid you in this process and for the public, I have the 2017 list, and I have a blank 2018 list, so that you can easily see who was assigned in 2017, and we can fill in as we go along for 2018.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I may. The Sierra Nevada Conservancy, we should eliminate from the list. The rotation for our county is over, and so that will be rotating to Tuolumne County. So we don't need to fill that one because we don't have a seat.
Okay.
In addition,
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Yeah, the Sierra Nevada Conservancy is a rotating seat for the Central Sierras. It is now with Tuolumne County, so unless they decide to give it back to us, we don't have to fill that seat.
So we don't need to assign a delegate?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
In addition, I might suggest that the McCombie River Watershed Ad Hoc Committee, we've never met. I don't see any reason to keep it on there.
You haven't met because it was part of the Mokwise project, and the project is complete.
Is what?
is complete.
So I would suggest that we zap
Just
that one
remove
off.
those.
Which, the Moke River Association?
No,
The
the
ad
Columbia
hoc.
River Watershed
Should
Ad
ad
hoc.
hoc committee.
The ad hoc committee.
So there's those two that we don't have to fill,
What
35 slots.
Chair, what about Central Sierra Economic Development? Or is that going in-house into Calaveras now? I think Mike, or Mr. Chair, Oliver.
Mr. Chair and board members, the Central Sierra Economic Development District, the CSEDD, has been folded into the Mother Lode Job Training Consortium, if you will. It still exists, but it exists as a member of the Mother Lode Job Training is part of the Sierra Central Economic Development District. So it still exists, but now we're under the umbrella of the Mother Lode Job Training.
So the designee for Mother Lode Job Training would fill that slot?
That is correct. That would be a joint committee by one representative at this time.
So then do we need to designate them separately, or can we just make an appointment to the Mother Lode Job Training Agency, JPA, and that would suffice?
I would say that would suffice.
That would suffice.
Okay, so then what I'm hearing is that we will eliminate Central Sierra Economic Development District, CSEDD, from this list.
I would put them jointly at this time because they are not eliminating the Central Sierra Economic Development District.
So we would just...
Either are they eliminating the Mother Lode Job Training Agency. They're just...
So we need to
one
note that that
representative will be
person
on
needs to
on
be the
both
same
committees.
person.
Right, until they take some action to dissolve or whatever they want to do.
I would suggest the same thing with the RCRC. Those four committees are all, just for efficiency.
They are, but they are all shown there because they each have a requirement that I have to send them separately. They don't
Right.
just let me send them one piece of paper.
Right. And that may change. They may have made a decision on that, but not ratified by their board. So that might be coming as far as
Are we
Central
still
Sierra.
talking about Central Sierra Economic
correct.
Development?
Yeah.
So just for the ease of clarity, would it be okay with the board if we just started at the top of the list and then worked our way down, and then if there's anything that needs to be changed or eliminated or whatever, or added, we could do it at that time?
I would agree.
Okay, good deal, thanks. So the first item on the list is Area 12 Agency on Aging, JPA. In 2017, our representatives were Supervisor Clapp, and Supervisor Oliveira was the alternate.
I'd like to keep that if I could.
You like to what?
I'd like to keep my position on Area 12.
I don't have a problem with that.
Fine.
I'll remain as an alternate on that.
I don't have a problem with that either.
Can I call a point of order? Is there no public comment on this?
There'll be public comments after we go through this.
So the next item is the Calaveras Amador McCollum River Authority. We have 2 representatives and 1 alternate. Supervisors Garamendi and Mills were the representatives, and Supervisor Toffanelli was the alternate.
As the representative on the McCallum River, this north of Pardee, or upriver from Pardee, I would like to stay on there.
And for continuity, I'd like to stay on it as well.
I don't have a problem with either that at all. I'll stay alternative if nobody else wants to do it.
Okay.
So who's the alternate?
Supervisor Toffanelli. The next one is Calaveras Public Power Agency. Supervisor Toffanelli was the representative, and Supervisor Garamendi was the alternate.
And I would like to stay on that.
I'll stay as alternate, if that's all right.
Okay, so now we are on Central Sierra Economic Development District / Mother Lode Job Training Agency, JPA. So,
I'm currently on that board, and I would like to remain on that board. On actually those joint boards.
Okay, so what we had last year was on Central Sierra Economic Development District. Supervisor Oliveira was the representative and Supervisor Clapp was the alternate. However, on the Motherlode Job Training Agency, Supervisor Oliveira was the representative and Supervisor Mills was the alternate.
I would defer, if Supervisor Clapp wants it, he can have them both.
Okay, I don't have a problem with that.
So, hang on a second, what did we just decide?
Oliveira as rep and Clapp as the alternate.
For the Central Sierra Economic Development District?
Yes,
Yeah, along
and
with
Motherlode Job Training Agency, which is further down the list.
Okay.
The next one is Central Sierra Child Support Agency, JPA. Last year, our two representatives were Supervisors Oliveira and Toffanelli, and Supervisor Garamendi was the alternate.
I would like to remain on that committee.
I would stay on.
Supervisor Garamendi, would you like to
Sure.
remain as the alternate?
Unless somebody else wants to do it.
The next one is Central Sierra Resources Conservation and Development. Last year, Supervisor Clapp was the representative and Supervisor Toffanelli was the alternate.
Question, I'm sorry.
I mistake.
Question, is that an active committee?
Did you go to a meeting at all? You weren't contacted for a meeting?
Supervisor Clapp?
No, and the Hardwood was just one meeting last year.
I did attend Hardwood.
Okay, but we're not on Hardwood yet.
I know, but I'm just saying that some.
Okay. So if Central Sierra Resources Conservation and Development did not meet last year, if we would like to continue it the way that it was last year, and then I can verify if they are still meeting. Is that what you would like?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so we're going to man that committee?
Yeah, for the time being, she's going to finally get back.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
The Central Motherlode Regional Consortium. Last year, the representative was Supervisor Oliveira, and the alternate was Supervisor Toffanelli.
I was never notified of any meetings or any activity whatsoever in this committee. Did not attend any meetings or received any communication from them.
So would we like to do the same, where we could keep the same representatives, and I will double check that they are still meeting?
I would recommend that, Mr. Chair.
That's fine with me.
Okay. The next one is the Children and Families First Committee, Prop 10. This is first five. The representative is Supervisor Garamendi, and the alternate was Supervisor Clapp.
I would like to stay on it.
Me also. Jack,
Yes.
would you consider swapping or something? Because you have a lot. If you want to keep it, it's no problem. If you're getting loaded up on the bottom, I would trade with you, but I'll keep it the way it is, however you
I'll
want.
swap out something else, but I really
Okay,
like this
okay,
group.
okay.
They're doing good things.
Okay, so the next one is the Calaveras Mariposa Community Action Agency, JPA. Our representatives in 2017 were Supervisors Toffanelli and Oliveira, and the alternate was Supervisor Mills.
Mr. Chair, I know that we had some discussion on this committee, and would you agree that they seem to have found their way, is a good way to put it?
Yes.
Then I would continue serving as a member of that committee.
And I would continue unless Supervisor Mills would rather swap with, as being a rep, and I'd be the alternate.
I've been the alternate on that committee, attended a number of meetings. Does it seem like it's a time crunch for you?
Yes, it is.
Then put me in as a representative with you as the alternate.
Okay. Thank you.
Which one is that?
This is for for Calaveras Mariposa Community Action Agency.
CMCAA.
Supervisor Mills and Supervisor Oliveira are the representatives, and Supervisor Toffanelli is the alternate this year. The next one is California State Association of Counties. When we made this designation in November, it was determined that Supervisor Oliveira would continue to be the designate, and Supervisor Garamendi would continue, but that you wanted to revisit it today.
I would very much like to continue as a CSAC representative. There are some projects I am involved with that agency. I am exploring possibly a position on the executive committee. But I won't make that move until the results of the June and November election.
I don't have a problem.
I would like to stay on as alternate.
Yes.
Mike attends all the meetings, but I like reading the stuff.
That's fine. I don't have a problem.
Okay, thank you. The next is the Calaveras Council of Governments, or CCOG. The representatives last year were Toffanelli and Mills, and the alternate was Oliveira.
And I would like to remain on COG. I think it's doing very well with the announcement of Caltrans working with us and the grants and the funding, $42 million. I think it's making headways and we're doing a good job.
I'd like to stay on it as well. I think we've made some progress in the last year.
Supervisor Oliveira, would you like to remain as the alternate?
I would.
The next is the Debt Advisory Committee. Representative was Supervisor Mills, and the alternate was Supervisor Oliveira.
It had no meetings last year, just so everybody knows.
It had no meetings?
Had no meetings.
Had no meetings? The Debt Advisory Committee?
The finance, the investment did, but not the debt advisory.
And I think some of the history with that is, and someone who might have more history could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was used in the instances where we were taking on debt, or that doesn't mean that there isn't merit in us sitting down and looking at it. Prime example, when we refinanced a couple of years ago, not that we would want to do it in this environment now, but it still continues to look at our debt portfolio. And
would it be better to not have this as a committee, but to form it as ad hoc as the need arises, or do you feel that would be too cumbersome?
I mean, my 2 cents, I would keep it as a debt committee at this point, and then it's together if we need to bring the stakeholders together, rather than create a new ad hoc committee, in which potentially delays going to get a meeting together.
I would agree.
I would tell you that being on the committee, even though they haven't met, it does, you have a different perspective even when you look at the budget. So I'll stay on as, and who's the alternate?
Supervisor Oliveira was the alternate.
You okay with that?
Sure. Yes, I would accept that as an alternate.
Thank you. The next is the Eastside San Joaquin GSA. The representative was Supervisor Mills, and the alternate was Supervisor Garamendi.
I would like to stay on it. They're beginning to put together their plan, and I would really strongly recommend that the alternate, if Supervisor Garamendi is available, to attend, at least to be up to speed on that. So should something happen, we have some continuity.
Sure. And I also think it's primarily in your district, so that makes sense.
Okay.
So Supervisor Garamendi, are you agreeing to be the alternate?
I am.
Okay, thank you. The next is the Fish and Game Commission. The representative was Supervisor Garamendi, and the alternate was Supervisor Toffanelli.
I would really like to stay with that. It's all right. I served in as a citizen before.
No problem. I will stay as alternative.
Thank you. I am just moving along when we get both to agree, unless somebody says something otherwise.
Unless somebody objects or says anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So next we are looking at the Hardwood Advisory Committee. The representatives on that are Supervisors Clapp and Mills, and Supervisor Garamendi was the alternate.
I know just because of history, it meets only once a year, towards the end of the year. So it is not going to take up a lot of time. It's just a matter of going through and bringing together all of the stakeholders into one meeting. It might be something as part of tree mortality or something like that, that I would like to see another person on there that is involved with the tree issues in the high country. I'm serious.
I agree. I'll volunteer for it. Tree or tree.
So we have Supervisor Clapp and Supervisor
Do you want to stay on it?
Yeah, I was supposed to go, and he changed
Is
it.
that good
like
enough?
the week before, yeah.
And then the alternate would be,
I'll take the alternate then.
is that good? Okay. The next is the IHSS Advisory Committee. It's an ex officio member. They do not vote. They are just there as a liaison. Supervisor Clapp was the representative, and Supervisor Toffanelli was the alternate.
I don't want it. I mean, it's simple as that. I'm not going to serve with George or Bonnie.
I've been asked by several board members to consider it. I'll do it.
You'll do it?
I'll do it.
Okay, and I'll stay the alternate then.
Thank you. The next is the Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council. Supervisor Oliveira was the representative, and Supervisor Clapp was the alternate.
To be quite honest, I never have received any contact, have not attended any meetings, have not been requested.
Would we
Is
like
it
to
a
keep
still
it as
active
is,
committee?
and I can check on it?
Would you check on it, please? We'll keep it as is. And who was the alternate on that?
Supervisor Clapp.
Okay.
The Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council, the representative is going to be Supervisor Oliveira, and the alternate is Supervisor Clapp, and I'm going to check to see if they're still meeting.
Thank you.
The next is the Law Library Board of Trustees. This goes to the chair and the vice chair. The next is Local Law Enforcement Block Grant Advisory Board. Supervisor Oliveira was the representative, and Supervisor Mills was the alternate.
Did they have a meeting?
Pardon?
Did they meet?
No, I once again, have never received contact or any notice of
So
meetings.
would you like me to
Would
check
you check
on
on
that?
it, please? And that's going to be Supervisor Mills as the alternate?
Yes. Next is the Local Area Formation Commission, or otherwise known as LAFCO. Our representatives are Supervisor Toffanelli and Oliveira, and the alternate is Supervisor Mills.
And I would like to stay on LAFCO.
And I would like to stay on LAFCO also.
Supervisor Mills, would you like to stay as the
Oh,
alternate?
yes.
Thank you.
Hello.
The next is the Mental Health Board. The representative is Supervisor Garamendi, and the alternate is Supervisor Clapp.
I'd like to stay on.
Same here.
Are they meeting? Do they meet?
Yeah, they
Yeah, they
meet, but
do.
the
We
problem
meet-
is, it's like we're meeting
we
today
meet
at 4
monthly.
o'clock.
It's actually a really
So we already missed
meaty
the
little
meeting.
program.
So I'm sorry, Supervisor Clapp?
Well, like today, they're meeting today, but it's at 4 o'clock, and you can see where we're at right now, so it's the timing issue.
Do you think that that would be something that you would want
Yeah, I
to
would stay
suggest,
on
that
it.
maybe the Mental Health Board not meet on board meeting day? That
Or
they
kick it
consider a
back,
different
you know,
date?
Or kick it back to like 5:30 or something.
It usually is the off Tuesday. Somehow, things are adjusted this upcoming year. So I think once we get it squared away.
Okay,
I'll talk
all
to
right.
them about it.
So then would we be continuing with Supervisors Garamendi and Clapp? All right. The next is the McCullum River Association. The representative was Supervisor Garamendi, and the alternate was Supervisor Mills.
I would like to continue.
I'll stay as alternate.
Okay, so the McCullum River Watershed Ad Hoc Committee no longer meets, so that is stricken from the list. Motherlode Job Training Agency, JPA, is the same as the Central Sierra Economic Development District, which is Supervisor Oliveira as the representative and Supervisor Clapp as the alternate. Moving on to Mountain County's Air Basin. That representative was Supervisor Oliveira, and the alternate was Supervisor Toffanelli.
Did they meet?
Did they meet?
I haven't attended a meeting or contact. Could you please check on that one too, Madam
So
Clerk?
again, can we just say that if we're questioning if they've met, we'll keep the alternates the same?
Yes.
Or the designees the same? And I will check.
Who are the designees?
Sorry, it's on the other sheet on the back of your paper.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's okay. You're welcome. The next is Mountain County's Water Resources Agency. Supervisor Mills was the representative and Supervisor Garamendi was the alternate.
And I'm very active in mountain counties. I'd like to stay there if I could.
Okay.
I'll stay as alternate.
Mountain Valley Emergency Medical Services, JPA. Supervisor Toffanelli was the representative and Supervisor Mills was the alternate.
And I would like to stay on this agency.
I'll stay as the alternate.
National Association of Counties, NACO. Supervisor Oliveira was the representative and Supervisor Garamendi was the alternate.
I would like to remain on that committee.
I'll stay as an alternate unless somebody else wants to do it. Like to attend, so pretty light work.
The next four are for RCRC, or the Regional Council of Rural Counties. Customarily, the same representative and the same alternate serve all four. They are listed as Regional Council of Rural Counties, Local Government Finance Authority, RCRC, Environmental Services, JPA, RCRC, and Rural Home Mortgage Finance Authority, RCRC. Supervisor Garamendi was the representative and Supervisor Toffanelli was the alternate.
I've worked pretty hard to learn this organization, and I would like to stay with it.
And I will stay as the alternate unless somebody else.
Well, if you find that it's too tight in your schedule, I'll take the responsibility.
Okay. I haven't had a problem.
Just,
No.
yeah, if it gets to be a problem, let me know.
Jack is,
I think you
gone
covered
pretty much. I've only covered it one time, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
The next is the Sierra Nevada Conservancy. Supervisor Garamendi has said that it's not our turn, so we will scratch that one for this year.
But if Tuolumne doesn't want it, we should definitely get it back. It's a good board.
Okay, so would we like to designate somebody just in case?
It's not coming back.
It's not coming back, okay. Is that ever?
It'll come back in, I think,
In the rotation.
4 years from now.
Okay, great,
or
thank
5
you.
years.
The next is the Solid Waste Task Force. Supervisor Oliveira was the representative and Supervisor Mills was the alternate.
I'd like to continue on that committee
Yeah,
with you.
yeah, yeah.
The next is the Treasurer's Oversight Committee. Supervisor Mills was the representative and Supervisor Toffanelli was the alternate.
I'll stay as the alternate.
I'll stay as primary.
The UC Cooperative Extension Advisory Council, the representative is designated as the chair and the alternate is the vice chair. And then the last that we have on the list is the Upper McCullumee River Watershed Authority, or UMRA, JPA. Supervisor Garamendi was the representative and Supervisor Mills was the alternate.
I would like to stay on that.
Same here.
Mr. Chair, that's all that I have. So if there's any board comments or public comment.
Is there any other board comments? No, then I'll open up to public comment. Oh, I'm sorry, hold on, CAO Tim.
The tree mortality task force, do we not, because I know we certainly send a member up for the governor's task force. Is that a committee appointment piece or do we just?
That is not a committee appointment. There's no JPA. But we are represented.
I just know that we send somebody up there and wanted to ask the question.
On the governor's task force. With the local task force, it's more an advisory, more of a reporting out situation, no control over the tree mortality program, which is under our emergency OES director, and I guess it's administered by Brian Moss out of the administration office.
Well, now Will with.
Now Will.
Yes, yeah.
But
I just wanted to ask, because I know we've had designated members, and that, for clarity purposes, if we wanted to list that or not.
And let's talk about that for a moment, just so we have an understanding. I have invited Will to attend Sacramento meetings with me when he can. It's very important that we maintain, as I stated earlier in the meeting today, boots on the ground, eyes and ears open, and grab our fair share of available resources. And I think that the ability for Mr. Downs to attend those meetings, attend our local tree mortality, and I would like to invite another board member to come up if they have time to see what happens.
So if you'd like to add it to our list, I don't see any reason why we could not.
No, I think we ought to add it to our list.
Have a member and an alternate.
Have a member and have an alternate.
So what is that going to be called? Is it the Governor's Tree Mortality?
It's called the Governor's Task Force on Tree Mortality, gov.tfmft, sorry. And then there's a local tree mortality task force.
So would this be the same? Would we need to list them separately?
I would keep both members to, they are the same. They are the same. No, I take that back. They are different, but do the same purpose, only in different levels.
So did you want it, do we want that to be that it's going to be two separate listings?
We can put it under one listing. One long name, if you will.
Okay.
Is that,
I would
Chair?
just for continuity,
You agree with
would
that?
want it the same, because the person who's
Yeah.
coming from the governor's is going to take it back to the committee.
So why don't we say the governors and local task forces on tree mortality?
That'll be fine.
Okay.
I think that there should be an option that the board chair be able to be involved in that at will and as time permits, if nothing more than just to provide that additional level.
I would welcome the board chair to attend those meetings.
Okay.
We'll even get you a seat at the big table.
Okay, so is Supervisor Oliveira going to be?
I would like to continue with that program.
That's fine. Do we need an alternate?
Well, the chair's going to attend, so there will be 2 seats on this, and then...
Well, actually, there is 1 seat on the governor's, and 1 voting seat, and 1 assistant seat right behind that seat. The very designated, limited seating at the governor's task force.
So I guess the question would then be to select a representative and an alternate, and then did we want the staff person to be, in this instance, the director of the Office of Emergency Services?
The director of the Office of Emergency Services can attend anytime, as long as in the presence of a representative from Calaveras County. Either the board member or the chair.
So would you like so in this, let's use this as an example. Supervisor Oliveira has been the representative for these 2 task forces and have the chair be the alternate?
That would work fine.
Okay. Well, in agreement with that?
What's that?
I said, are we all in agreement with that? Okay.
I attend the local meeting just because it has a lot to do with my district. I don't assume there's any conflict.
I don't think there's any restrictions on local meetings.
So the one other thing that I did need to add is when we are talking about the RCRC Environmental Services JPA, in the past, we have designated staff as alternates as well. The last year, the alternates were, I want to say, the integrated waste manager and his counterpart at the landfill. What I see is a recommendation from Public Works that Jeff Krovitz would like to be would be an alternate. Robert Packinger would be an alternate, and Shauna Towler would be an alternate. She's I believe, an administrative assistant out at the landfill. Shauna Towler is.
Well, I definitely think that we need to have someone who understands the technical piece on that. It's a very technical committee, but I would defer to the people who work with the solid waste committee to see through their recommendation. Wasn't sure who it was.
So that would be Supervisors Oliveira and Mills.
I didn't do it, it was the other guy with mustache and glasses. What was the question again?
So the question is if you would like to designate staff to act as alternates on the RCRC Environmental Services JPA, and the recommendation from Public Works is Jeff Krovitz, Robert Packinger, and Shauna Towler.
I would leave that recommendation in place. Only because of their knowledge and expertise in that field and their involvement. RCRC is, I'm going to be quite honest, is an organization that Jack's pretty well deep in, and I would defer to him.
I definitely haven't been deep in this. You need the technical people because they
So did you want all three? That would be my question. Did you want all three?
My only, if I could add, my only comment or caution, I have zero issues with executive managers. I don't know whose feedback that is, if that's mine. I don't either. But I do have concern about Shauna, not for her qualifications at all, but sending really non-executive staff, mid-level analysts to it, where we could, if we really needed somebody else, look at the solid waste manager himself as opposed to one of his staff people. Just my comments or thoughts on the matter. I just had concerns from an administrative standpoint about placing as a standing committee representing the county a mid-level manager.
So how would you like it to be, instead of person specific, have it be the Public Works Director, the Deputy Public Works Director of whatever Robert Packinger's thing is, and the Solid Waste Manager?
I think that would be a lot clearer.
Then it's whoever is in that position, should that change for any reason.
That works. I don't have a problem with it. Anybody else? I'm good with that.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that's all I have on this item.
Okay, now we'll open it to public comment.
Good evening, Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. I'd just like to share with you an observation I made. Last year, Mr. Oliveira stepped up to 14 committees. 2 by virtue of volunteering and 2 by virtue of being the chair. Supervisor Garamendi volunteered for 13 committees, but because of a conflict, he was only able to serve on 12. Supervisor Mills volunteered for 8 committees. Supervisor Tofinelli volunteered for 6 committees. And Supervisor Clapp volunteered for 3. I'm just saying this to show the difference between people that are willing to step up and do the right thing by representing their constituents, and the people that aren't willing to step up and represent their constituents. Couldn't have been happier to hear that Mr. Clapp isn't interested in serving our committee. I don't think he should be on the Area 12 Agency on Aging either. You know, Mr. Fry is on that, and you don't want to work with him. I'd also like to say, when Mr. Clapp walked out on one of our meetings, we had a very interesting discussion, and it was brought to our attention that there are allegations against Mr. Clapp that includes elder financial abuse and fraud.
Bonnie,
So
we're talking about the committee assignments.
Yes, that's what I'm getting
We're
at.
not talking about lawsuits. We're talking about assignments to committees.
Okay, I'm referring to people's qualifications for sitting on these committees. I think it's important that only people that are interested in serving on a committee serve on a committee.
Point of order. My qualifications were picked by the people that put me here on the bench. And that's who qualifies me.
I consider interest on a committee being a qualification. So I would just like to say that as we were made aware that certain people's qualifications may not fit, we think it's important that we note that when someone is interested in a committee and serves on it, that they do a good job, and that they fulfill the obligations of the assignment, and that you folks also have a responsibility to see that who you allow to sit on these committees is appropriate for that job. So if you are aware of any lack of qualifications, shame on you. You should have spoken up and allowed the proper people to sit on committees. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Yes. If Mr. Clapp doesn't want to serve with me, why is he on the area 12 on 8?
Any other public comments?
Anybody answer that question?
Any other public comments? Okay. If not, we'll bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I think, did you want to comment, Lynn?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to comment?
I don't know what to say, but I think that Mr. Clapp is doing a good job. Thank you.
I would have, if it came back to the board now,
No, hold on. Any other public comments? Okay, if not, we'll bring it back to the board. Public comments are open.
I have a lot of comments, and like Bonnie says, that we know of predators or people that shouldn't be on boards. Yeah, I do. Bonnie, you should not be on a board, especially the IHSS, because you assaulted one of your clients. And that's known fact, and that's the reason you're never allowed to be on it. And George, I have a lot to say about you, and hopefully the grand jury will look into your behavior with women.
Okay, all right.
Point of order. Please, sir. We began this day with before we did public comment, and you read a rule off the rule book. That rule shall not apply just to the defense of a board. These are allegations that were just said, and there should be proof to back them up. If there's no proof to back them up, then you need to address this point of order. And that's all I have to say.
I will say this point of order. We will move on from this subject right now. We will take a vote as to what was presented before us and move on. No more comments about any allegations of anybody. Okay?
Yes.
So I'm looking for a motion to accept the positions that we went through.
I'll make that motion, Chair.
I have a motion by Supervisor Mills. I'm looking for a second.
I'll second it.
I'm sorry. I have a second by Supervisor Clapp. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Madam Clerk.
Item 32 is from the Board of Supervisors, the appointment of applicants to serve on various committees, commissions, advisory boards, and county service areas. So these are appointments that we make throughout the year, so they're not just for this meeting. This is the first round of applications. We already have many applications that are scheduled for the January 23rd meeting. Normally, I will read through the applications that we've received, and if there is any recommendation or not recommendation from a supervisor, if it is in regards to a district-specific position, you would voice that at this time, and then they are normally voted upon all at once.
That's fine.
The only exception would be if there is some reason that one of the appointments or one group or something needs to be pulled and acted upon separately due to any potential conflict of interest or anything that you view that you would need it voted on separately. So I'm going to go ahead and read them. Okay. So the Altaville Cemetery District has one vacancy for a term expiring December 31st, 2021 for member 5. We have an application from Lynn Helmbacher, who is an incumbent. The next is the Comanche Regional Park Advisory Board. There is one vacancy for a term expiring December 31st, 2019 for a member at large 1. We have an application from Albert Alt. He is the incumbent. For the Children's and Families Commission, First 5 Calaveras, we have one vacancy for a term expiring December 31st, 2020 for a community-based organization representing early childhood development. We have an application from Andrea Tiquette, who is an incumbent. We have one vacancy on that commission for a term expiring December 31st, 2020 for a Health and Human Services alternate. Susan Sells is the incumbent. We have one vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2018 for the health officer. This was previously held by Linda Wynn, who retired. So we have an application from Colleen Rodriguez. We have a vacancy on the Commission on Aging, one vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2020 for a District 1 Representative 3. We have an application from Janet Clark, who is an incumbent. On the Fish and Game Commission, we have one vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2018 for a District Representative 1, a District 2 Representative 1, my apologies. And we have an application from Karen Waldier, who is an incumbent. We also have a vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2018 for a District 2 Representative 2 position, and we have an application from Ashley Skeen.
Madam Clerk?
Yes.
If it's all right, I spoke to the current incumbent, Gordon Long, our wildlife biologist, Cal Fauna Foundation, and the RCD representative. He would like to be considered. He fell behind over the holidays and did not submit his application timely. So if it's all right, I'd like to give him the opportunity to get his application in. All due respect, Ms. Skeen. If he fails to turn this in, we'll bring this back.
So would you like to hold both of the appointments for District 2 and consider 3 applications for 2 positions at one time?
No, I'd like to let Ms. Walder go forward.
Okay. So moving on, we have one vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2018 for a District 3 Representative 1. We have an application from Mark Oswald, who is an incumbent. We have one vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2018 for a District 3 Representative 2 position, and we have an application from Ron Severud, who is an incumbent. And we have one vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2018 for a District 5 Representative 1 position, and we have an application from Albert Alt, who is the incumbent. On the IHSS Advisory Committee, we have one vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2019 for a current past consumer 2. We have an application from Gail Williams. On the Parks and Recreation Commission, we have one vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2018 for a District 5 representative, and we have an application from Kevin Ost, and it was my mistake, I did not list that he is the incumbent.
Madam Clerk, with Board's Chair permission, is there any other vacancies on Park and Recreation?
There are many other vacancies on many other commissions. These are only the ones that we have received applications for.
And we'll address the vacancies on the next item.
Okay.
So for the Prevent Child Abuse Council, we have one vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2019 for a representative of public and private schools. We have an application from Amy Hasselwander, who is an incumbent. 1 vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2019, representative of prevention and treatment. We have an application from Maggie Rollins, who is an incumbent. 1 vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2019, representative of foster parent caregiver. We have an application from Heather O'Leary, who is an incumbent. 1 vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2019, representative of prevention and treatment, community-based social services. We have an application from Farrellyn Roberts. We have 1 vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2019 as a representative of the Public Health Department. That application has been received from Marcy Gallagher. 1 vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/2018, representative of prevention and treatment, mental health services. We have an application from Julie Hall. And our last appointment for this meeting is a vacancy on the Public Education Governmental TV, or PEG TV Commission, and it's a vacancy expiring 12/31/2019, a District 5 representative, and we have an application from Pleasant Ples Hill, who is an incumbent.
Any board comments or? Okay, no, let's take it to public comment. Any public comments?
Ashley Skeen, District 2.
Dry.
With all due respect, I carefully read all the rules about applying for a position on the commission, and they were supposed to be submitted before the end of December, and I did follow those guidelines and rules, and I would just like to be considered because the rules are the rules, and everything that is done on this board is done by rules and procedure, and I'm well aware that Mr. Long is your cousin, Mr. Garamendi, but I would still like the rules to be considered. Thank you.
So if I can just add, when we did our annual advertisement of the vacancies, we did ask that for any applications that were going to be considered at this meeting to be submitted to the clerk's office no later than December 15th so that they could be included in this package. As you will note on the board item that we always list financing or alternatives or other agency involvement. And one of the alternatives that is listed is that the board may choose not to make appointments to allow additional time to recruit applicants for these vacancies. So it is within the board's discretion to not make a decision on one or any one of, or all of these appointments.
You have nothing to say?
I have nothing to say. Gordon Long is a registered wildlife biologist, a professional hunting guide, a member of our RCD. He served on this committee for over a decade. If he wants to continue to serve this county in that capacity, I believe we should give him the opportunity.
Okay. You are the District 2 Supervisor. If that's your wish.
That's my wish.
Any other public comment? Okay, I'll bring it back and.
Mr. Chair, I do have a comment.
Yes.
According to our rules and according to the direction and the desire of the board, we can make this determination legally. I want to make sure that we're following our own guidelines here and make sure that we're doing the right thing.
Could you
I'm not
clarify?
advocating for either side. I want to make sure that that agreement is recognized by all the members of the board as I think it is. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is correct. What she stated is correct. It's within the rules.
Okay.
We can add additional time to seek additional people to fill those positions. We're under no obligation to accept any of the applications.
I just wanted that clarity. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion. I have a motion by Supervisor Garamendi. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by...
Chair, can we take a brief recess, like a minute?
Yes.
I would like clarification from on something.
Okay. We're taking a 1 minute break, or why don't we take more than a 5 minute break, because I think the DVD is about to run out. We need to change it.
Okay, good. 5 minute break.